And some of the Indian Supreme Court judges have suggested the lockdown seems to be the only option, with the virus raging in cities and towns all across India. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
We are plugged in and ready to go on this Freedom Friday here on the Big Talker, 106.7 FM. An earlier start than usual here today, as we have a busy day to round out what you may call the traditional work week. Our week is just getting started. You're going to get a whole lot of Joe Catenacci if you're tuned in to the radio today, particularly if you are living over in Brunswick County. And why is that? Well, this morning we jump on the air here 7 minutes past 7 a.m. as we typically do Monday through Friday here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM. And what a roller coaster of a ride this week has been from the transmitter standpoint. Monday, Tuesday, getting back into the swing Wednesday, Thursday, and rounding it out, of course, with our Freedom Friday broadcast here today until 10 o'clock. Well, right when we wrap up the show, our friends with the Signal Fire radio program will commandeer the studio and go into another marathon recording sesh as they provide great commentary and insight as it relates to those who serve our country in our armed forces and for those who transition back into civilian life, and in talking with many folks who have lived all sorts of experiences. Rob Renz and his buddies Matt Milot, Evan Anderson do a great job in how they lay it out there for you and are an open book. So many times, when we hear and speak with veterans and others who serve in our armed forces and through our military, very hesitant to maybe open up and share life experiences and some of the trials and tribulations that they go through. Well, here on Mondays from 6 to 7 p.m., they pull it out of folks who are willing and open to sharing their experiences, the highs, the lows, all sorts of, hurdles and obstacles that many are fighting through while they're, on the air sharing these sorts of things, which is why, hey, they want to jump in the studio, it's all yours. And we look forward to hosting them in just a little while, right after we sign off the air here in a few hours from now. And with that, once we sign off the air, it's right down Highway 17 to Conway. And because it's graduation week at many colleges and universities across the country, that being the case down at Coastal Carolina, they have moved up a couple of their ball games, including the one here today that was scheduled. Typically, we play about 6 p.m. on Fridays as you get into the thick of conference season. And in the month of May, most of the games go 6 p.m. on Fridays, 2 o'clock on Saturdays, and then 1 p.m. on Sunday. Well, because they've got graduation this weekend, they've got some parking issues on campus, we're going to have a 1 o'clock start today down in Conway, which is why if you're tuned into my and our social media platforms on YouTube and Facebook, video portion of the show, you can see that I'm donned in our Coastal Carolina gear as we'll jump in the car right down Highway 17. And at 12:40 this afternoon on Hank 105.5 FM in the Myrtle Beach market, we'll jump on the air with the Myrtle Beach Family Golf countdown to first pitch and a 1 o'clock game time between Coastal Carolina and the Troy Trojans as we begin a Sun Belt Conference weekend baseball series right after we sign off the air. Going to have to weave in and out of some traffic, of course, and about an hour and a half to Conway. So I'm thinking that I'll have about 40 minutes before I jump on the air on Hank 105.5 FM to deliver the play-by-play. We're moving down the stretch through the month of May. We've got, let's see here, 3 games this weekend, a midweek next week. And next week we'll be all over the place. We'll be in Charleston and then to Mobile, Alabama. This time next week we'll be coming to you from the Gulf Coast in Mobile with our Freedom Friday broadcast. So we've got 4 games next week, 4 games the following. So that's 8 to 9, 10, 11. 11 games left in the regular season. And then we enter the Sun Belt Conference Championship, which will take us to Montgomery, Alabama, where we'll also be for the better part of a week, which means more remote broadcasts back here to the coast on the Big Talker 106.7 FM. Of course, you can find us at BigTalkerFM.com. Our live audio stream available each and every day through our website. As I mentioned, the video portion of the show right here on Facebook and YouTube. And the mobile app available through the Apple iStore for your iPhone and the Google Play Store for your Android. Just search Big Talker 106.7 FM. We're 12 minutes past the hour. It's a Freedom Friday. 3 million. Why do I say 3 million here this morning to kick off the broadcast? Well, that's the estimate of how many children have dropped out of school as a result of the pandemic. This was a story that was published in the New York Times this week. To see in slow motion what it's like when a child falls behind, 2 reporters with the New York Times spent a week with an 11-year-old as he tried to learn. This 11-year-old deals with multiple different circumstances, single mother in the home, lower socioeconomic conditions, falling behind, of course, this year because of the all-virtual way of life. And in this New York Times report, also included inside the article, quote, the dropout rate was most alarming among major blue cities such as Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., where teacher unions have pressured school districts to continue with virtual learning. You know, I was flipping through the boob tube for a few minutes last night before I went to sleep, and I came across Thursday Night Law and Order on the Peacock Network, one of the alphabet networks. A show that's been airing since, I was probably like 5 years old. One of the longest running series in the history of American television. And their show these days, they've gone all woke, so they follow all the real-time events going on in our society. So a lot is centered the last few episodes from, I gather, around COVID. And the premise of the show last night was a woman who had a thriving restaurant in Manhattan, and she was on wit's end. She ended up holding one of the detectives hostage at her restaurant as the detective was going to order something from the restaurant. She's walking in the street of Manhattan. Let me go stop by here. And when she got there, a police officer was on scene because they were called and arrived after the woman held one of her colleagues hostage in the restaurant because she had completely lost it. Her mom apparently died of COVID in the hospital. And it showed a scene where all she could do was talk to her through FaceTime, virtually on the phone. No contact in the hospital to say goodbye. Her husband had left her. Her 19-year-old son dropped out of college. She was losing her restaurant. And during the first few minutes of the show, they showed a timeline of where things started back in February, March of 2020. And at first, how people, a few weeks into it, were upbeat, doing what they needed to do for others because they were asked to do so by their government. They were united in flattening the curve. And then 3 months passed, and things started to get more complicated. She was drinking more. Her relationship with her husband, who has lost his job, was falling apart. Her son was becoming distant. And then 7 months later, her mom died of COVID, as all she could do was watch on her phone as a nurse contacted her in the full, nuclear suit that they were wearing in the hospitals. And then after 8-9 months, she could no longer afford the bills. She was underwater with her business, and her restaurant had to close. Restaurant that she owned for 20 or so years. And she lost it. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I'm just sitting there, and honestly, it's like you start to shed a tear. Just sitting there and thinking about it. And all I could think about is the tens of thousands of businesses, 40% of small businesses gone over 1 year. None by their doing. You make a bad choice, you practice bad business, you don't provide the customers what they want. That's one thing. I'm thinking to myself, this is so sad. And what's even worse is that the government is supposed to be representing you, sticking up for the little guy, right? That's what we hear from Grandpa Joe and many of the elites in Washington. These are the people responsible for just about everything that has run this country into the ground. The fact that the government labeled hundreds of thousands of businesses and workers as non-essential, as I've said this week, it's very hard to believe how this is all played out. COVID did not shut down more than 40% of small businesses permanently. That was the government. And what's even worse is the fact that the media refused to follow any of these stories until now. This week, Monday, we told you about a Wall Street Journal report surrounding the frenzied climb in lumber prices, home buyers, renters, do-it-yourselfers footing the bill, highlighting the ridiculous uptick in the cost of doing business. This across the board. This is what happens when you just shut down the world and its economy for a year. And then we get another example of the national media this week finally getting around to a glaring story that we've been talking about for months. I guess it's better late than never, or something like that. Two national stories this week by the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, two major publications, well known by everyone. Two stories that we've discussed at length, and we're just some mid-sized, smaller market here in southeastern North Carolina. We've been talking about these things at length for months, while all the outlets were doing for the last year, day in and day out, story after story, hour after hour, round table after round table. The headline was Orange Man Bad, 24/7. 3 million children have dropped out of school as a result of the pandemic. And what do you know? Even the New York Times reporting this here today. The dropout rate was most alarming among major blue cities where teacher unions have pressured school districts to continue with virtual learning. It's sick. It's sick it should make you sick to your stomach. All brought to you by the U.S. government and folks like Dr. Fauci. Well, this morning it is a Freedom Friday, and we'll tell you a story about a man by the name of Harold Garish. Mr. Garish is featured in the book Answering the Call, a story of everyday valor. This is a book that was put together a few years back to commemorate the residents of Plantation Village up in Porter's Neck who served in World War II. We have a copy of the book, and we're going to read directly from it and get a firsthand perspective as to what life was like for Harold Garish as he served our country during World War II. He will be our featured military veteran this morning during our weekly Salute to Service segment, which comes your way in about 15 minutes. We'll also hear from Chad Adams as well, as we typically do, just after 8 o'clock. Yael Ossowski from the Consumer Choice Center. Yael has made it back to the States after 8 months in living in Vienna, of course, where he resides. Last week, he and I were talking about why it's a huge mistake if the Harris-Biden administration moved forward with waiving the intellectual property protection for COVID-19 vaccines, meaning forcing our companies to hand over the recipes for the COVID vaccines to other countries, and why it will be a big mistake down the road if, in fact, we move forward with this. Well, what do you know? The Biden administration supports the proposal aimed at forcing private businesses to hand over their intellectual property for the COVID vaccines. When we talk about intellectual property, we hear these terms used often when the country China comes to mind, and how China, for decades, has been stealing, pulling, grabbing all sorts of insight from our American companies and even our government to then utilize to manufacture products, develop goods that then flood our market at half the price, putting our American companies in distress. And yet here we are once again, the U.S. government backing a waiver to force our companies to turn over the recipe, so to speak, to speed up vaccination production around the world. Well, there's a lot of things that go into that, not just waiving the rights when we talk about the ability to even manufacture a very complicated vaccine. Do they even have the capabilities to do that? Or are we just going to hand over the recipes and, well, now you've got all of our insight. What else do you need? We're here for you. Securing intellectual property rights is equal to laying the groundwork for all sorts of research and development, whether it be modern medicine or, again, PVC pipes from a plumbing outfitter in Charlotte, say. These are all things, of course, that apparently our government is happy to just turn over to even adversaries around the world. Once again, our U.S. government at work for you, the people here of the United States. Yael Ossowski will join us from the Consumer Choice Center just after 9:30. And I thought I got a little chuckle from Yael just the other day because he made a post on social media as he was rolling through the aisles of the grocery store. He said back in the U.S. after 8 months away, he's still blown away by the number of different string cheese options at the grocery store. And, of course, his lovely hard seltzers that he likes to indulge on every once in a while. What a beautiful country flooding with bountiful consumer choice. Just to give you a little perspective on how someone who lives and spends time in many different places around the world, the way in which he views his time here in the greatest country the world was ever known, due in large part to the American people. Swamp to many of you out there tuned in here this morning. We're 25 minutes past the hour.
When you decide to sell that unwanted gold jewelry, coins, or fine silver, you should get the highest price possible. Perry's has been giving people more for their gold, silver, and estate jewelry for 25 years in a safe and private environment that is trusted by your neighbors and friends. We pay the most because we want you to come back to Perry's Emporium. Whether it's to sell more unwanted items or to buy new jewelry for any occasion, check elsewhere and then get the Perry's price and you'll see. Perry's Emporium on the corner of Shipyard and Independence in beautiful Barclay Commons, and on the web at perrysemporium.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gabe Frank of the Frank Institute, and I want to tell you about our IV vitamin, infusion, and hydration therapies. These IVs are the most effective treatment for vitamin and nutrition deficiencies available, and with our wide range of offering, your treatment can be tailored to your specific needs. Whether you struggle with hydration or nutritional deficiency, injury recovery, low energy, please feel free to check out our IV infusions today. Schedule an appointment at 910-679-8534 or check out all our treatment services at www.frankinstitute.com.
Here, Tom Goolsby on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
What got me into the recovery business is a result of drug addiction with one of my sons. Anyone that has had a similar experience knows the pain involved and the many sleepless nights, the shame, the guilt, and the anger. After spending about 1.5 years at a local halfway house, my son and I decided to see if we could offer help to those suffering from addiction. A few years later, Prodigal Recovery opened its doors. We chose a name based on the familiar parable in the book of Luke. Part of the parable says, "My son was dead and is now alive. My son was lost and is now found. My son was dead and he was revived. He was lost and he is now found." Prodigal Recovery is a 12-bed home located about a half-mile west of the Cape Fear Hospital right off of Wrightsville Avenue. It's a 7-bedroom home, large entertainment room with billiards and more, covered outdoor area, and a gym. We believe fun and entertainment are important, and so is structured living. We offer that as well. You can reach Prodigal Recovery at 338-3795 or visit prodigalrecovery.org.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint Faith and Personal Development. Join myself and Kevin Adams every Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Wilmington's Big Talker for a fun, uplifting conversation about the upside of upside-down living.
Bottom of the hour news break. Again, our friend Chad Adams this morning just after 8 o'clock, as he does every Friday. Our weekly Salute to Service segment comes your way here in about 5 or so minutes. Also want to give a shout out and a tip of the cap to our buddy Matt Ham. He and Kevin Adams with Wake Up Our Faith. That's a weekly program that you hear on Saturdays and Sundays at 8 a.m. here over at the park formerly known as Hugh McRae this week when gunfire erupted. Thankfully, again, no one injured. But given that he's got, he's got a herd of kids. And, in fact, he last night was back at the ball field. And prior to game time for his son, I think he's got twin sons, and 2 were playing again last night. And prior to first pitch at 6 o'clock, he, along with others, gathered around the ball field in prayer. One for the ability to live and breathe another day. The ability to go and enjoy recreational activities with other folks out there who want to be sound in mind and body, and teaching the lessons of competition and hard work among young people. And for him to step up and say, you know what, I'm going to lead us in prayer just 24 hours following a situation that could have turned out a lot worse than it did. That deserves a shout out here this morning, and I want to thank Matt for his friendship and his partnership here, along with Wake Up Our Faith and Kevin Adams and their mission through Uprint, YOUprint.life. If you want to find out more information as to what they do and why they do it. And I myself actually ventured out to the Little League fields yesterday, yet not at the park formerly known as Hugh McRae, but near where I live, because a friend of mine had a game with his son. So I grabbed little Sophia and the red wagon, the radio flyer, and we spent a little time at the ballpark and got Sophia engaged with some kids out there and just enjoyed the sights and the sounds of a public park and people coming together and just trying to enjoy their life away from all of the other stuff that you got going on and you're trying to figure out. Be able to break away for a little while. A little entertainment and recreational activity. It's good for the soul when you're not dodging bullets. We've hit the bottom of the hour. Again, our Freedom Friday segment coming your way after the news timeout. Chad Adams with us in hour number 2. Cameron Moore with the Wilmington Cape Fear Homebuilders Association also with us here this morning, twice a month. We talk about stories that, well, the national news media gets to 5 months later. In this instance, related to the construction industry and the rise this week, the Wall Street Journal publishing a report, the rise in the cost of business within the industry and how it's impacting so many different people. And the New York Times finally getting across, finally finding enough time outside of their Orange Man Bad 24/7 coverage over 2020 to show the American people about the true impacts and real consequences of what happens when you just shut down the country for a year. Oh, by the way, something that we had been harping on for the better part of the last 6 or 7 months. We've hit the bottom of the hour. Our call-in number is 910-299-7535. We'll take your calls after the Freedom Friday segment, which comes your way next here on the Big Talker FM.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. A school in Southport will be closed today after a fire last night. It happened at Southport Christian School on Flagship Avenue. According to a post on the school's Facebook page, the main building was on fire in the back half of the elementary building. Assistant Fire Chief Todd Coring said a janitor working at the school initially spotted the fire. Coring says no one else was in the building at the time and no injuries have been reported. A Brunswick County man has been convicted of first-degree murder for a shooting in 2017. On December 8, 2017, 24-year-old Eugene Powell shot and killed Anthony Scott Beers in the Longwood community. Powell ran from law enforcement for 4 days before he was caught. Brunswick County Sheriff's deputies arrested Powell in an apartment in Charlotte. The judge sentenced Powell to life without parole. Governor Roy Cooper making a visit to a vaccination site in New Hanover County yesterday. The governor applauded New Hanover County and the city of Wilmington for their vaccination efforts. The governor says more than half of adults in the state have received at least one dose of the vaccine, and he says we are going to emerge from this pandemic stronger than we were before. The governor says the pandemic has highlighted inequities that existed before COVID-19, like access to high-speed internet and the need for accessible health insurance. And a surfer from Wrightsville Beach is riding his way onto a national TV show. Mason Barnes, who is up for a Guinness World Record for the largest wave ever surfed, is one of the 14 people who are competing on a new ABC show called The Ultimate Surfer. The 8-episode series gathers some of the world's greatest up-and-coming surfers to train and live together as they battle it out at the World Surf League's state-of-the-art surf ranch in California. The 2-hour premiere will air on Monday, August 23rd and Tuesday, August 24th on WWAY ABC. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Well, today we're going to see another chance for isolated showers and even thunderstorms to develop. Some of the stronger ones could bring down some gusty winds and some lightning associated with those. But as we go throughout the day today, temperatures are going to top off in the low to middle 70s, a few degrees cooler than where we should be for this time of year under mostly cloudy skies. Then late tonight, we lose the clouds and temperatures drop down into the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
I got the call to leave today. My team and I are gone away. Where to, how long? Well, that's a need to know. You can bet on us, 'cause we're good to go. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue.
You know by now that on Friday mornings we spend time just after 7:30 here to highlight stories of service through the men and women of our armed forces, active duty veterans, the families of those who serve. And we have a coffee table book here in our studio titled Answering the Call, a story of everyday valor. This was put together a couple of years ago by our friend Kevin Maurer, with the help of those at Plantation Village, which is a residential home up in Porter's Neck. And this book commemorates the residents of Plantation Village who served in the armed forces during World War II. And this morning we'll tell you the story of Lieutenant Commander Harold Garish of the U.S. Navy, who served from 1940 to 1946. I was off duty that day, December 7th, 1941. I was rousted out of bed by gunfire around 8 a.m., which was pretty early, I reckon, for a Sunday. I figured it was practice firing with bales of hay, realistic charges without projectiles. I ran outside. The crew on the battleship USS Arizona, moored 150 yards away on Battleship Row, appeared to be prepping for the daily routine. I admired them for turning to, he recalled. It wasn't until I heard the roar of aircraft and a plane flew directly over the Arizona and then over my head, and I saw the red circles on the plane wings. I recognized it immediately. My world changed. We were under attack. The entire Arizona was on fire. I knew the ship was going to explode. A terrifying blast skyward rocked the ship. I ducked behind a tree. A section of a ship's steel gun mount crashed within 10 feet. I lost my hearing. I don't know if it was physical or psychological, but I knew I had to get out of there. I spotted the body of a uniformed Japanese soldier near a tree. I have no idea what happened to him or how he got there, but later presumed he was a pilot whose plane had been shot down. I left him alone, didn't want to touch him, figured intelligence people would want to examine him, but I know he was dead. A few survivors made their way to the shore. They were badly burnt. I did not have any medical supplies. I just waited for them on the beach until first aid was able to arrive. It was devastating. The entire Pacific battle fleet sunk. It felt like the end of the war and ultimately the end of the world. I don't remember the rest of the day. The next day, the Area Service Force commander assigned me and my team to ferry photographers around the harbor to take pictures of the wreckage. One of the guys on my boat took a picture of the Arizona as is listed, covered in heavy smoke. I was a little nervous about getting in too close because it was still burning, he remembered. On October 30th, the 2016 Parade magazine cover ran the picture for about 1,000,000th time, he said. That picture ended up being one of the most famous taken of Pearl Harbor. Soon afterwards, I received orders to the battleship USS Alabama, and I saw action in the North Atlantic and the Central Pacific. He doesn't go much further into detail as far as what that action entailed, but he does say, I don't know why I survived and others did, but I have tried to live my life to the fullest to show respect and honor for those who were killed at Pearl Harbor and throughout the war. Today, we highlight the service of Lieutenant Commander Harold Garish of the U.S. Navy from 1940 to 1946, and a resident here locally of Plantation Village up in Porter's Neck. These firsthand accounts of their life of service during wartime can be found in the book Answering the Call, a story of everyday valor, a book to commemorate the Plantation Village residents who served in the armed forces during World War II. Today, we salute Harold Garish in his service to our country.
It's not will I live or will I die, but will I let my brothers down? Can I live with what I've seen and done? Will I even be around? It's hard to see and it's killing me, but the price I can't let show. It's a pain in my eyes, it's my alibis. I wonder if I come back home. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot, American, tried and true. And I'll fight for this land I love, from the sea, the ground, or from high above, 'cause I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot. Damn right my heart beats true. I'm a patriot.
I'm K.O. Davis from K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree, and I want to be your tree man.
When your trees need cut, 2 letters to know. One is a K, the other is an O. K.O.
Tree man. Proper trimming is the most important thing that you can do, so don't just hire anybody to do it. You need someone that knows what they're doing.
K.O.
Call the professionals at K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree and visit KOTrees.com.
Hey, Bill O'Reilly, and I'm here to tell you about a dramatic new book in my Killing series. It's called Killing the Mob. Now, the mob traces the brutal history of the fight against organized crime in America. From John Dillinger to Bonnie and Clyde, Al Capone to Bobby Kennedy. The real history of these iconic figures is more riveting than any fiction. So please read Killing the Mob. You can get it now wherever books are sold.
Attention homeowners. Are you looking for cash at a lower interest rate? Tired of paying high interest rates on credit cards? With the Figure Home Equity Line, you can use your equity to help you start saving. Rates as low as just 2.88% APR. Get approval in minutes and funding in as few as 5 days. Apply at Figure.com and see if a home equity line is right for you. Figure out your finances at Figure.com. Equal Opportunity Lender. NMLS 1717824. Terms and conditions apply. Call 1-888-819-6388 for details about credit costs and terms.
We wouldn't sell you a dining room table, so don't buy a medical device from a furniture store. US Med Express is Wilmington's leading supplier of golden technology lift and sleep chairs, carrying a variety of models in our showroom at 1733 Dawson Street. Our chairs lead the industry in power lift recliner features and advances in technology. Our chairs are FDA certified as medical devices, which means it's 100% tax deductible and helps with a number of medical conditions, including arthritis, poor circulation, and sleep apnea. Give us a call today at 910-500-6162 or stop by and experience our chairs for yourself at 1733 Dawson Street. That's 910-500-6162. 1733 Dawson Street in Wilmington. US Med Express.
We interrupt to bring you this horrible news. Experts say we'll see larger numbers and different breeds of mosquitoes to wreak havoc on your backyard, making this year one of the worst.
Anopheles and Culex rati mosquito.
Yeah. Experts also say there is only one defense against this onslaught. Call the Bugman from Bugno Pest Control.
That's Mr. Bugno to you, pal.
Bugno Pest Control's mosquito-killing formula keeps your yard bug-free. Call Bugno Pest Control, 910-367-2501, or visit bugnopestcontrol.com. Take back your yard.
Our call-in number is 910-299-7535 if you'd like to contribute to the show. Of course, you can do so through our digital platforms as well. Our video portion available on Facebook. You can comment in real time, slide into our DMs if you'd like. We have heard from one chorus throughout the course of the past year, and that has been the chorus of Follow the Science. Calls for conformity throughout the pandemic have echoed this term. But as you know, science is rarely actually a consensus. And it's hard to follow the science, when the CDC issues guidelines that, we'll generously describe it as patently absurd. The latest, of course, coming from the CDC releasing rules for how summer camps should operate in the light of the pandemic. I don't know about you. Was out at the park last night. Hundreds of kids and their families, many without masks, outdoors, and everything was A-okay. Yeah. But for the CDC, we all know, though, by the way, young people, summer camps for kids, the young staffers who work alongside these kids. We know that the science has told us over the past year that these groups are at minimal risk of death from COVID because we went from we need to flatten the curve, we need to protect the elderly, the most vulnerable, to at some point it turned into, no longer can anyone ever get COVID ever again, and we need to remain shut down as a result of that. Despite the fact it's, a 98, 99% chance, generally healthy person, no matter how old you are, going to survive. The government's guidelines for summer camps create a situation where your kids won't be going to summer camps. They will be more or less inside a prison if the CDC had their way. In fact, even the most revered doctor in all of this had some things to say surrounding the efforts that were laid out this week by the Centers for Disease Control surrounding the guidelines that would turn these summer camps into outdoor prisons. You must stay socially distanced. You must wear a mask outdoors. A number of other things that just kind of, make me laugh and cry all at the same time. Doing a lot of that these days, laughing and crying. Given that for the better part of the last year, fear has been instilled in the bones of millions of Americans who are still having a really tough time, even after getting the vaccine. Really having a tough time navigating their way through all of this, due in large part to agencies like the Centers for Disease Control and this clown.
And let me stay on the subject of kids, because summer camps are coming up, and a lot of parents are looking forward to sending those kids out and hoping they have a great summer, since they weren't able to last summer. But the CDC guidelines right now for kids in summer camp say masks must be worn at all times, even outdoors, by everyone, including vaccinated adults and children as young as 2 years old, and campers should stay 3 feet apart, even outdoors. My question to you is, given what research shows about transmission outside, about the low risk of serious illness in children, are these CDC guidelines excessive?
You know, I wouldn't call them excessive, Savannah, but they certainly are conservative.
I'm not really sure what that even means. I would not call them excessive. I would say they're conservative. Savannah Guthrie of NBC kind of laid out everything for him there. We need to wear masks outside and stay separated, while my kids are at the Little League Park right now playing with the kids without a mask on, not separated, but at the summer camp. This guy reminds me of a clown. Bigger than Bozo, by the way. Sort of kind of like Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons. I'm trying to find out where Sideshow Bob is in all of this. Obviously, people like Dr. Fauci don't get out very much. In fact, I really thoroughly enjoyed my walk in the park last night to watch maskless kids play baseball.
And let me stay on the subject of kids, because summer camps are coming up, and a lot of parents are looking forward to sending those kids out and hoping they have a great summer, since they weren't able to last summer. But the CDC guidelines right now for kids in summer camp say masks must be worn at all times, even outdoors, by everyone, including vaccinated adults and children as young as 2 years old, and campers should stay 3 feet apart, even outdoors. My question to you is, given what research shows about transmission outside, about the low risk of serious illness in children, are these CDC guidelines excessive?
You know, I wouldn't call them excessive, Savannah, but they certainly are conservative.
Good to see finally some news publications actually coming out and highlighting the devastating consequences, particularly on our children, from shutting down the country for a year. 3 million children are estimated to have dropped out of school as a result of the pandemic. In fact, somehow, some way, the New York Times was able to put together enough resources to actually follow an 11-year-old kid for a week as he navigated the world of virtual life. The dropout rate, what do you know, most alarming among major blue cities such as Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., where teacher unions have pressured school districts to continue with virtual learning. You say our educators and our teachers need to be at the front of the line to get vaccinated. They change things up, and the teachers are at the front of the line. Now all Americans can get vaccinated. Yet we're still sitting here. Well, we could be heading into a winter a few months from now that would be devastating due to variants, due to interest waning as it relates to the vaccine. Just, very thankful that we have a news media, a rather large corporate news media that has finally gotten around to some of the stories that we've been trying to call attention to for, the better part of the last 8 months. And then you look at, some of the other approaches that have been taken in the way they have been covered, of course, and you highlight Florida, the state of Texas. Texas has been open fully for months. Stadiums packed. No people segregated like lepers. You get Governor Andrew Cuomo, every here and there, still somehow garnering attention in the news, running portions of his briefings for the state of New York nationally. We remember, of course, because we're old enough to remember last year, right around this time, in fact, this guy was on the tube every single day. His 25, 30-minute news briefing in its entirety aired to the entire country, not just regionally up in the Northeast, but to the entire country. He was the leader, if you can recall. What a truly sick individual. As our friend Ray Nothstein put it in his piece at Carolina Journal earlier this week, it's time to move beyond the mask and our culture of fear, folks. But, again, there's a good portion of our country that are just fine with the continued quote-unquote mitigation efforts that weren't working then and have no real point as of now. And it seems to be, cut right down the line, just as we are politically these days. Those who live in the more progressive areas of our country, they have seemed to leave the scientific evidence behind, along with those that they put in office. And then when you look back to the schools and you find that, well, the teachers' unions were working hand in hand with the CDC in their guidance surrounding the schools and the kids. 3 million kids are said to be have dropped out of school over the past year. The reasons for Americans to doubt every department of government continues. The CDC, which is supposed to offer credible, unbiased scientific guidance, has been found once again to be politicizing guidance about the virus. And then you've got Grandpa Joe out there yesterday in Lake Charles, Louisiana, touting this massive spending bill that he has coined as the American Jobs and Family Act. I mean, how could anyone so selfishly not want to invest in the next 20 years of our country, as one troll laid that out to me yesterday as I commented on a piece that was put together by Brad Palumbo over at the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE, because the president says the American Families Plan, it has American and families in it. I mean, how could it be bad for the American people? He says it will build a stronger economy by investing in our kids, our families, and our economic future. I mean, how could you not get behind something like that? Well, all you have to do is look just beneath the surface a tad, just scratch it a little bit, and you end up finding that, you move forward with $2 trillion in additional spending on top of the 6, 8, whatever else the hell we've spent over the past year. And this is actually going to lead to declining investment in business, a lower gross domestic product, known as the GDP, fewer hours worked for employees. That's if, in fact, an employer can find employees. You hear up in the state of Montana, the governor said, hey, we appreciate the extension of those federal unemployment benefits. Thanks, but no thanks. And instead, we're going to try and incentivize people to get back to work. And instead of the extension of the federal benefits, we'll offer you a bonus to get a job. Fewer hours worked, declining investment, and lower GDP. An analysis by an Ivy League economist laying this out as far as the $2.5 trillion spending plan, the family spending plan for America. What this ends up to be, once again, it ends up turning into just more dependence on the federal government. Chad Adams joins us next.
Keeping Charlotte informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. A middle school student may be charged with attempted murder in Rigby, Idaho.
A sixth grade female student retrieved a handgun from her backpack. She fired multiple rounds inside of the school and out. She injured 3 people. 2 of them are students, and 1 of them is a school employee.
Jefferson County Sheriff Steve Anderson is heard on KIFI TV, says the victim's injuries are not life-threatening. A teacher disarmed the girl, holding her for police. So far, no word of a motive. Police in St. Cloud, Minnesota say the man who took 5 hostages, holding them for hours at a local bank, is no stranger to law enforcement.
We have had numerous contacts with this individual dating back at least a decade, including violent crime.
St. Cloud Police Chief Blair Anderson on KSTP TV says all 5 of the hostages were released or managed to escape unharmed. Apparently, the suspect, 35-year-old Ray McNeary, got into some kind of dispute with bank employees before police say he took the hostages. He was arrested without incident. Wyoming Republican State Representative Chuck Gray welcoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney's pending ouster from her GOP leadership post in the House.
Liz was the first one there, eating up this narrative and going along with this impeachment narrative, betraying President Trump, the enormous work that President Trump has done for our country, for Wyoming.
Gray says Cheney doesn't represent us in our Wyoming values. After getting a tip, police responding to a San Antonio truck stop say they found a trailer of an 18-wheeler packed with suspected illegal immigrants being smuggled into the country. A number of them took off. Wall Street, Dow futures up 109 points. NASDAQ futures 27 points higher. S&P futures up 9 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Tell me why Relief Factor is so successful in lowering or eliminating pain. I'm often asked that question. Pete and Seth Talbot, the father and son founders of Relief Factor, tell me they believe our bodies were designed to heal. The doctors who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best ingredients, 100% drug-free ingredients that each help your body deal with inflammation. Order the 3-week quick start now. Discount it to only $19.95 to see if it will work for you too. Call 800-500-8384. ReliefFactor.com.
As a follower of Christ, you are created and called for greatness, now more than ever before. In his powerful sequel to the bestseller Kingdom Man, Tony Evans' Kingdom Men Rising calls men to break free of apathetic faith, to take a stand, do more than just exist. You have been called to rise up and influence those around you. Discover how when you get Kingdom Men Rising and learn the art of intentional impact.
New from Tony Evans, sponsored by the Urban Alternative.
As the coronavirus continues surging out of control in cities and towns across India, the country's highest court has chimed in on the government's handling of the pandemic.
The Supreme Court told the government that it must comply with a previous ruling to supply 700 metric tons of medical oxygen to the capital, Delhi, every day. Lawyers for the Delhi government said that still isn't happening. The court also ruled in favour of another state, Karnataka. It upheld a High Court order that Karnataka's daily supply must also increase. The central government argued that if high courts in every state passed similar orders, the system would become unworkable. India's healthcare system is overwhelmed. Many hospitals repeatedly say oxygen stocks are dangerously low.
The BBC's Jill McGivering. Elsewhere, hospitals in southern Egypt have been flooded with COVID-19 patients. The virus spikes for a 3rd time in various parts of the country. News and analysis at townhall.com. Well, we now know of at least one person who will not be running for mayor of Atlanta next time around.
In a surprise election year announcement, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms has disclosed she will not seek a second term. Bottoms made the announcement in a lengthy open letter and accompanying video Thursday night. The 51-year-old Bottoms, who narrowly won a runoff election 4 years ago, was Atlanta's second black woman executive. Bottoms wrote that she prayed over the decision with her husband Derek, who's an executive at the Home Depot. I'm Mike Gracia.
The president of the Tokyo Olympic Organizing Committee says it would be quite tough for IOC President Thomas Bach to make a planned visit this month to Japan, with the state of emergency order being extended by the government to Tokyo and other areas until May 31st. Canceling the trip could be embarrassing for the IOC and local organizers who say they can hold a safe and secure Olympics in the midst of a pandemic. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
Coming in like a freight train into our second hour of the most listened to, entertaining, and informative program across the Cape Fear region. You have found us at 106.7 FM, The Big Talker at WFBT. Also, of course, various platforms in which you can find us on a daily basis through our website at bigtalkerfm.com. Subscribe to our new YouTube channel, video portion of the show available there on YouTube and Facebook each and every morning. Our mobile app, as I once again deliver a call to action. If you or your loved one does not know how to install a mobile app for your cellular device, call me. I make house calls. I'll come right to your house or your business. I'll meet you on the side of the road and download the app for you here today. If you have an iPhone or an Android, it's newly updated. And you can find us at Big Talker 106.7 FM through your mobile device. Take us wherever you may be. Chad Adams joins us every Friday morning just after 8 o'clock. Chad, I hope all is well with you here today and this week.
Oh, it's a beautiful day, Joe.
Hey,
are you kidding me? We're lucky to be down here.
I'm wondering for yourself. I haven't yet received the invitation. I know we're still a couple of months away, but the town of Oak Island, where you live, going to enjoy multiple fireworks festivities this year because apparently the Democrats that run Southport not interested in hosting 60,000 people and allowing small businesses to thrive after a year of turmoil. And in fact, it is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Southport paying for one of the fireworks displays that will be shot up over Oak Island this 4th of July.
Of course, it's bizarre because they ran this story, said, oh, the 4th of July festival is on, and here's what you can do. You start reading through it, and you realize there is no fireworks display, there is no parade, there is no naturalization ceremony, but there's food. The mayor of Southport's a doctor, and he has been overly cautious. I mean, the vast again, we're over 50% immunized, and it's April or May finally, I mean, we're heading toward it in Brunswick County, probably more than 50%, and a lot of the people by July certainly either the immunizations work or they don't, and if they don't, then why are we doing them? And if they do, then why aren't we taking advantage of that? It's absurd. I mean, it really is. They decided to, and it's going to hurt business and industry down in the Southport area because this is the official 4th of July festival for the state. Oak Island jumping just head first into, hey, we're open for the summer. We love tourism. We feel we're safe. Restaurants are doing well. In fact, they're very busy. It's amazing how busy it has been. It's almost like people kept coming to the beach because they couldn't come last summer. That it's just the traffic and the number of folks down here and the rentals, finding rentals, very difficult. Building like crazy down here. But they're going to have 2 fireworks displays, one on Beach Day, which is traditionally where they have their fireworks display a couple days before the 4th. And then on the 4th, they're going to have, so Southport, which was going to do theirs, and I know Oak Island's bragging. I mean, people down there, I was at a restaurant last night, they're bragging. They're like, oh, no, it's going to be even bigger than Southport's. And Southport had a pretty big display, but they're going to have 2. It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, Oak Island's ready to roll.
Well, I'm ready for the invite because I know you guys have a front row seat over there, on that beautiful island that you call home. So I won't hold my breath, but
You're
be hoping.
Always welcome, Joe. There is no. I mean, even though you're from Jersey, we didn't close the gate. You're absolutely come on down. We're not in a gated community, so unlike some folks, but you're welcome to come down.
I wouldn't want to drop that invite in the post, in the mail for the post office anyway, because it would take probably until the 4th of July to actually receive that invitation.
You know what? It's so funny you said that. We were just talking yesterday. We have some relatives over in Italy, and we sent a Christmas package to Italy. Nothing grand. We sent one in November. It has still not arrived. And it was last we checked, it was in Miami in like early February. But it's amazing that the U.S. Postal Service. I don't know if there's an exchange or if the Italians just took it. I don't know. But
are there? Can you name an agency within government that runs efficiently and effectively? I'm just wondering because I haven't run into it yet.
There probably are, and I can remember. I can't. It was Milton Friedman who said if you can name 3 letters, pick any 3 letters in the alphabet, you've probably named an agency that can either be cut back or removed in government. So. Given the acronym for it.
Chad, I've been asking you, or I've been asking rather all of our guests this week the same question, so why not ask you, what is your fair share of what someone else has earned?
Yeah, that's amazing. When you have the top 5 and top 1, you're talking about taxation, and it's always the Democratic go-to class warfare argument. If they can turn one group against another, that's kind of the direction they like to head in. And if someone has, worked real hard and became successful, they act like all successful people were just these evil, greedy, rascals that didn't do anything productive or create devices or services that made their life easier and more enjoyable. But to say when the top 1% and 5% are paying like 90% or 96% respectively of all the taxes out there, to say they're not paying a fair share, it's just again, you can tie this directly to our governor. Our governor has, and I'll talk about this in a second, but if you look at what the governor said, I said, just let us know what the metrics are, that if we hit those metrics, your executive orders go away. And the governor's staff will not do it. The governor will not do it. They just want to have this kind of rolling, hey, we're going to open up this, but they won't tell you what the metrics are. And so Democrats, when they say fair share, you notice it's not a measurable thing. They'll never say, well, if they give us 80% of everything they earn, that's fair. They never tell you what that is. They just, because it allows the argument to continue, and we never can kind of come together and say, wow, the wealthy are paying 90% of the tax burden in this country, and yet you Democrats are spending, the Republicans too, to a lesser extent, are spending us into oblivion and racking up debt and deficits as far as the eye can see, and there doesn't seem to be untethered from caring about it.
Well, with that said, we're getting ready to push forward the American Families Plan. I mean, and I was called selfish the other day because I said, well, maybe we should pump the brakes on the American Families Plan. He said, how dare you, challenge an investment, for selfish people like you. You could not see the big picture in that this will, of course, be seen 20 years after you die. And I'm like, well, I'm 38 years old, 20 years after I die. That's a little while, hopefully. 20 years now, I'll be, 58, hopefully, heading towards retiring. And at 58, I'm sitting there saying, well, am I going to see any benefits when I'm 58 from the $2 trillion that we're spending now through the American Families Plan? It's just a little confusing when you start to, talk about long-term investments and the government making these investments into our country.
It's governments don't invest. That's another misnomer. Governments don't invest. They take money from people, and I'm not putting it down, but to pretend that government is a modicum of productivity and innovation, it's not. I mean, government provides services. That's different. They say, and Democrats have used that phrase very effectively in the past 40 years to say, we're investing in infrastructure. No, we're not investing. We're creating infrastructure. We're repairing infrastructure so that goods and services, can move over those wonderful roads. And so, government can do roads very well, and it should, but that infrastructure plan that Biden proposed has very little to do with infrastructure. It's a big nod to a lot of left-leaning Democrat states and policies that don't really contribute anything except to protect unions and protect, Democrat interests. So, if we really want an infrastructure plan, then put one out there that has everything to do with roads and rail and infrastructure, and let's have that debate. But sit here and act. What they do is they give it a friendly name, like the one. How could you be against, Save the Kids? And let's put an extra $1 trillion in there and call it the Save the Kids program. And how dare Joe be against saving the kids? That's a misleading policy. Republicans and Democrats alike love to name bills in very friendly terms, And then if you're against it, how can you be against that?
Yeah, because, of course, the media, which has finally gotten around, by the way, to a couple of news stories regarding the consequences of shutting down the country for the better part of the year. The New York Times followed an 11-year-old around the last week or so, virtual learning, and how he's had to deal with learning loss this year. And then even the Wall Street Journal was talking about rising prices when it comes to the construction industry. And who's footing that bill? Of course, that's the renter, the home buyer, the do-it-yourselfer. And these sorts of stories have been discussed, on this program and many others like it, on a local scale for months. But I guess, groups like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, too much Orange Man bad coverage over the past year prevented them from giving the public a little information as far as what happens when you shut down the country and the economy for a year.
It is, Joe. They never accept the responsibility for what they cause. It's like the bully that trips you in the hallway when you're middle school and then blames you for it. Wow, shame you tripped over your own feet there. And so, the government creates these lockdowns which prevent people from going to factories and prevent people from going to work. And then when there's shortages, they're like, oh, see, there's price gouging and all these people are doing these evil things. And what's happened is they've restricted supply for a year on goods, services, on microchips, lumber, all of this stuff. And then they blame the companies. It's this bizarre, twisted thing and people should look around and say, well, it's not Weyerhaeuser that stopped itself from producing lumber. No one's price gouging. And prices are based on demand. So if there's a lot of demand and there's very little product, the way you make that product go the furthest and help the most people is prices go up. I mean, if you look right now, lumber prices are up about 500%, and it's difficult to get lumber. And a lot of that had to do with when everything got shut down, people were doing a lot of home improvement projects. So you had a lot of people buying lumber for home improvement projects, so they're stuck at home. And you had, factories that were shut down, and you couldn't timber the lumber. They weren't going out and cutting trees down, and then they weren't filling up the sawmills. Now that's starting to come back, but it hasn't caught up yet. So prices are rather excessive. But in the meantime, everyone's screaming, look at the price gouging that's going on.
Well, and lumber just being one of the many materials that are forcing massive increases in the price related to construction across the country. Talking with an HVAC guy the other day, the cost for sheet metal is up 15-20%.
Sure.
I mean, across the board, you shut down the economy. Eventually the chickens are going to come home to roost, as one famous pastor once said.
It's the only reason I'm not building right now. We moved down here to build a home, design the home, have the design, have the land, have it ready to go. But the main reason we're not building is because the prices are exorbitant. I mean, to be at $360, dollars a square foot, $350, $375, it's absurd. And think about that. It would be just 1,000 square foot home at $375,000. That's unbelievable. So the housing market's hot because people are buying. Those housing prices don't reflect the new cost of construction, but you have to wonder when you look around that people are actually paying those kind of exorbitant rates. So they must see something worthwhile in building houses that are that expensive to build right now.
Chad, politically, and we'll talk a little bit further surrounding construction and the industry related to our area just after the bottom of the hour with the Wilmington Cape Fear Hombuilders Association. I caught a piece this morning, really just the headline. I wasn't going to give them my click, from Politico, of all places, in once again criticizing the governor of Florida, because that's the cool thing to do among news agencies these days. Governor DeSantis has, quote, left behind a trail of former disgruntled staffers and has no long-standing political machine to mount a national campaign. And these disgruntled staffers have even formed a support group. This was honestly a story here today at Politico.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating that, you could go back about 4 years, 4.5, well, actually 4.5, 5 years, and see the same story about a guy who came down an escalator in New York. He doesn't have any political experience. He's never run. He doesn't have a national infrastructure. He's just a loudmouth guy that was a TV host and a billionaire from New York. So to say those kind of things, and yet when a Democrat comes to, remember not Ted Cruz, but the guy with the guns out in Texas, we don't even remember his
the
name.
guys with the guns
now,
in Texas.
He's going to take your guns away.
Beto.
Beto. Yeah, O'Rourke. This guy was going to be the second coming. And if you look at the way that they extol the virtues of the people on the left, and whether it's Bloomberg's going to come in and he's going to have billions of dollars to throw in, and he's going to do great. And Kamala Harris was going to be fantastic. She couldn't even get 1% of the vote, dropped out. Now she's vice president of the United States. But to sit here and look at who they go after, that's who they fear. They fear Trump. They fear people like DeSantis. I mean, I even saw one this morning that Norwegian Cruise Line. I happen to be a fan of Norwegian, but they're gonna take all of their boats out of Florida if he doesn't let them have a vaccine passport plan. Well, that's pretty interesting because they'd have to shut down. There's a company that's reeling with billions of dollars in losses because of COVID shutdowns, and they're going to move all of their ships out of Tampa, Miami, and Port Canaveral that they've been booking passengers on and buying plane tickets for over the past couple of months, trying to get their industry back up and going. They're not going to leave Florida, and they just can't afford to. So they'll come to some kind of understanding. But they're attacking DeSantis because he doesn't fear them. They're used to Republicans. This is a big deal. The media is used to Republicans that want to be accepted by the media. In other words, you're conservative and that's great, but when I push on you, your desire to be liked by the media overwhelms your sense of what you believe the role of government should be. We see this a lot in the North Carolina legislature for years. They still let WRAL in to do interviews, even though WRAL consistently bashes them and calls people like Mark Robinson, a black lieutenant governor, a member of the KKK. Mm-hmm. They want to be accepted by the media. And then you do have people like Mark Robinson that push back, like DeSantis that push back, like Cruz and Rand Paul and Trump and these others. And we're seeing it's not that Trump did something new or novel. He represents the way people really feel about D.C. and the media. He's a reflection of that, not the creation of it. And so the media creates this false thing about Liz Cheney being, she's the real conservative and Trump's just a wackadoo. No, there's not really a battle. There's just a difference. Liz Cheney is the status quo D.C. elite, and Trump represents the Americans that feel that D.C.'s corrupt and that the media goes along to get along and doesn't do tough work anymore. So, and to see it play out. DeSantis, they fear. It's clear that they fear him. He's doing a great job and getting a lot of coverage for free.
Chad, a couple of things just quickly as we wrap up here this morning. I saw that you posted a story or retweeted a story this morning regarding the audit that's going on out in Arizona. I've got family in Maricopa County, and they're the biggest Trumpsters on the side of this planet. So they have their own feelings about what happened in their county in regards to the 2020 election. But I haven't really paid much attention. It's not in my neck of the woods. I keep an eye on it, but I know we've had some callers that have tried to get me to go down that rabbit hole. Just give us your take on the audit that is ongoing out in Maricopa County, or where do we stand even with this?
Well, the story I posted was actually a story that I thought was well done. It was a lengthy story that covered what's happening there. Look, I don't live there. I don't know what happened there, but I know that the left is really afraid of an audit. The right believes that there was something that was not done properly. Unfortunately, they do have a group that's doing the audit that does and has made some statements about it being a fraudulent election and things. But there's an audit. They have until like May 14th of Maricopa County. Joe Biden won the state by about 10,000 some odd votes. He won Maricopa County by about 50,000 votes. So the left is afraid something might change. The right wants to prove that something did change. It's not going to undo the election. I thought the piece was very fair because it covered the facts. Regardless of your belief system, I think the story covers what's happening. And that's what's really important here. What are the facts in this case? What are the legalisms of it? What are the implications of it? And that's where we really need to be, is, and we do need to make sure we have election integrity. Voter ID is a big thing. Why Democrats are against voter ID? You get a fishing license, you have to have a photo ID, but not a photo ID to vote. And I do want to mention one other thing, which is our illustrious governor, who's oddly enough doesn't get a lot of coverage nationally. The Democrats act like he's the second coming in this state, but nationally he gets very little coverage because he's not really illustrative of what a leader would be. And I was just looking through his executive orders. Do you realize we have 21 pages of executive orders since he's been in office? 21 pages. I mean, I don't mean like a page of text, a page. 21 pages of single-spaced number of executive orders. In other words, there's like 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 executive orders. The most current one is executive order, I think, 209. Yeah, it's 209. And so we have over 10 pages of just executive orders related to COVID. And what I'm challenging everyone out there, there's no way any of you have been lawful with respect to his executive orders, because you can't, the media cannot even explain. They're even violating those executive orders regularly. The governor can't even explain his own executive orders. In the current executive order that is 31 pages long, the first 10, 12 pages are whereases, which is trying to take credit for things that have happened in the past. And then there's pages of definitions, like what is the definition of an amusement park? And then we get into it, and I'll read you one example. It's 3.3 section C. Okay, and this is on page 11 of his current executive order, and it says, subsection 3.3a and b above completely replace subsections 2c and 2d of Executive Order number 130, subsections 2a and b and 2e-h of Executive Order number 130, section 3 of Executive Order 139, Executive Order number 152, 177, and 193, and subsequent executive orders continue in effect as specified. Nobody, I repeat, none of the 10 million people, including the people that wrote this one, can understand what all that means. It's absurd. We're moving forward. The public is ready to be free and to move and live, thrive, and survive. And this governor still wants to dictate every little minutia of our lives.
Chad Adams with us here this morning on the Big Talker FM. Lastly, Chad, let's go to Atlanta real quick because we got word over the course of the last week that one of the police officers involved in the shooting of a man, what was it, last year, as it related to a stop that he made after he fell asleep at the wheel at a fast food restaurant. And apparently
Wendy's.
The firing, and then the Wendy's burned to the ground and all this other stuff. Well, apparently, upon further review, the firing of this former Atlanta police officer has been reversed, and he's back on the job. Doesn't this create another situation here when we talk about the release of body camera footage and the eagerness to jump to conclusions, the need to know by the media to push the narrative rather than waiting for the facts to come out, to let it play its course out through the judicial system, and then ultimately, there will be or should be at least some accountability. There's going to be plenty of eyes on it. This rush to judgment here is not doing anyone any good in this ongoing divide that we have in regards to interaction with law enforcement.
And yet we see it again and again and again. This knee-jerk reaction where there's already a judgment. Don't let it play out in the courts. Don't let the system work or not work. We can allege that everything is systemically racist, and then we hide behind that without even understanding what that phrase means or the justification behind it. So, yeah, the officer was cleared and returned to the force. He acted by protocol. In fact, those protocols are meant to protect citizens and cops. And yet when cops get mowed down or killed by criminals that they pull over, there's no media outcry. There's no one seems to even care. And if you think the cost of law enforcement was expensive before, try defunding it and figure out how expensive it's going to be later, because you can't defund police and then say you want to restructure police and add more training. Two things happen when you do that. One, you have to pay for the training, so that's going to cost a lot more. And then remember that mention earlier about scarcity and surplus. The same thing happens in jobs. If you create scarcity in jobs, you have to increase. That's what you're seeing right now in the market. There's hardly anybody that wants to work or is working. And so every restaurant, every place, you walk into Lowe's, you get a spot interview, they'll hire you on the spot kind of stuff. And same thing with jobs. If you're gonna bastardize and treat police so horrible, you're going to create a situation where not many people want to be police officers. And the cost of hiring a cop will go up, and that's going to cost taxpayers more because not as many people want to be a patrolman, not as many people want to go into the profession. It's going to cost more, and they don't want to go into certain neighborhoods. And to get them to go into certain neighborhoods, you got to pay them a lot more. You're going to get a lot more hazard pay. So the cost of law enforcement is going to go up precipitously because the left wants to, go after cops. And it's just that's the way everything they go after becomes more expensive. It never goes in the opposite direction. Everything they do makes life, even global warming, climate change, it's going to make your life extremely expensive and very few freedoms. So look at where they go with their policy and beware.
Chad Adams with us every Friday just after 8 o'clock, second hour of our program. Chad, it's a pleasure. I hope you have a great weekend.
You too, Joe. Look forward to seeing you soon.
That's our friend Chad Adams across the river in Brunswick County this morning with us here on the Big Talker FM.
How old were you when you paid off your student loan? Are you still paying for it? Student debt can be crippling, and today it's even more important to keep debt in check. Help your student build a brighter financial future by encouraging them to attend Cape Fear Community College for the first 2 years. CFCC costs thousands less than four-year schools, and classes in our university transfer program are accepted at four-year schools across the state and beyond. Help your kids get a head start academically and financially at CFCC. Learn more at cfcc.edu.
It's time for the Coastal Home and Lifestyle Showcase, Saturday, May 8th in the Middleton Park Extension on Oak Island from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Meet local business people who specialize in maintaining your home, outdoor living, and supporting your healthy and active lifestyle. Admission to the Coastal Home and Lifestyle Showcase is free. Live music, food, free samples, and giveaways. And you can register for a $200 cash drawing. That's the Coastal Home and Lifestyle Showcase, sponsored by Southport Magazine, Saltair Heating and Cooling, the Stateport Pilot, and the Southport Oak Island Chamber of Commerce. CoastalHomeAndLifestyleShow.com.
Acoustic wave therapy at the Frank Institute is a revolutionary treatment for inflammation, issues of blood flow, and is a solution for the constant suffering of chronic pain. Through the localized transmission of sound waves, stem cells are stimulated to bring about restored blood flow, vascular regeneration, and the disbursement of pain receptors to affected areas. If you've been told that your issues could not be treated without surgery or prescription, give us a call. Non-invasive, non-surgical, and prescription-free. Acoustic wave therapy is only available at the Frank Institute. Call today, 910-679-8534, and ask about acoustic wave therapy.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. A school in Southport will be closed today after a fire last night. It happened at Southport Christian School on Flagship Avenue. According to a post on the school's Facebook page, the main building was on fire in the back half of the elementary building. Assistant Fire Chief Todd Coring said a janitor working at the school initially spotted the fire. Coring says no one else was in the building at the time and no injuries have been reported. A Brunswick County man has been convicted of first-degree murder for a shooting in 2017. On December 8, 2017, 24-year-old Eugene Powell shot and killed Anthony Scott Beers in the Longwood community. Powell ran from law enforcement for 4 days before he was caught. Brunswick County Sheriff's deputies arrested Powell in an apartment in Shallotte. The judge sentenced Powell to life without parole. Governor Roy Cooper making a visit to a vaccination site in New Hanover County yesterday. The governor applauded New Hanover County and the city of Wilmington for their vaccination efforts. The governor says more than half of adults in the state have received at least one dose of the vaccine, and he says we are going to emerge from this pandemic stronger than we were before. The governor says the pandemic has highlighted inequities that existed before COVID-19, like access to high-speed internet and the need for accessible health insurance. And a surfer from Wrightsville Beach is riding his way onto a national TV show. Mason Barnes, who is up for a Guinness World Record for the largest wave ever surfed, is one of the 14 people who are competing on a new ABC show called The Ultimate Surfer. The 8-episode series gathers some of the world's greatest up-and-coming surfers to train and live together as they battle it out at the World Surf League's state-of-the-art surf ranch in California. The 2-hour premiere will air on Monday, August 23rd and Tuesday, August 24th on WWAY ABC. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Well, today we're going to see another chance for isolated showers and even thunderstorms to develop. Some of the stronger ones could bring down some gusty winds and some lightning associated with those. But as we go throughout the day today, temperatures are going to top off in the low to middle 70s, a few degrees cooler than where we should be for this time of year under mostly cloudy skies. Then late tonight, we lose the clouds and temperatures drop down into the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
We have been from one to another extreme over the course of the past, 13, 14 months here across the U.S., around the world, due to, the Rona. And, not too often where I wake up, put my feet on the floor on a Monday morning, combing through some news articles. And the first person I think of on a Monday morning is our guest, and his name is Cameron Moore. He's the executive officer with the Wilmington Cape Fear Hombuilders Association. But he came into frame because of an article that I picked up on Monday morning from the Wall Street Journal talking about the rise in lumber prices and how it's added an extra $36,000 to, on average, to a single, new single-family home getting constructed across the country. And I'm thinking to myself, I've heard this before. Oh, yeah, I heard it on the Construction Connection portion of our program twice a month on Fridays about 6 months ago. And, Cameron, as I bring you in, I mean, it's pretty amazing when, the national news media finally catches up with this, little old talk show here in Wilmington, North Carolina, as far as, the trends, the news, the information that impacts people's lives, because this truly does have an impact on everyone's life, whether it be those who have the fortunes to be able to construct a new home, or those who have decided to renovate or improve, their lifestyle in the house that they reside in currently. I mean, across the board, inflation is hitting us, when it comes to the housing market, and everyone is footing the bill. And that's it.
That's it.
I mean, in a nutshell. And you and I had talked about this like 5-6 months ago, saying, listen, on the front end of this pandemic, we're essential workers, so we're going to continue moving forward. But we feel, and when we had the head of the National Association of Broadcasters of Home Builders, he said it. He said, listen,
right,
we're going to be okay now, but what's it going to look like 12, 15, 16 months from now is going to be a whole different story. And here we are 12, 15, 16 months from now.
No, and you're right, Joe. I mean, first of all, good morning.
Good morning
glad to be
you.
on the show. And yes, I mean, we've talked about it. Matter of fact, it may be even longer than 6 months. I mean, we had Robert Dietz, who is the chief economist from the National Association of Home Builders. We've talked about it. He's been on the show. We've had Jim Tobin, the National Association of Home Builders chief lobbyist. He's been on the show. We've talked about this. We talked about it coming into October, November, because we started to see the lumber prices and material prices. We've always had the labor issues, and we're going to still continue to have those, and we'll touch on that just a little bit. We've got some positive news. I don't want today's forecast, so to speak, to be all negative. But we started to see price increases for lumber, particularly lumber at first, last September. And there's a whole sorts of things we've talked about it, COVID related, shutdown of plants, maintenance work, people obviously getting sick, the shift work, the production level shutting down. But the biggest thing is now what we're seeing, and you're right, the national news is starting to pick up everything up. Well, pick this issue up among other things. as I was coming in, I was going through some of the Twitter stuff and going through some of the news as well. And I saw that steel prices, CNN has picked up from Bank of America's concerned on the steel prices and basically from the stock market section. So steel is another commodity that is starting to bear the brunt of, not enough in the market. Hasn't been produced. Somebody was telling me yesterday that we are almost somewhere around the line of 1.7 million housing starts, and we are 1.2 million to where we actually have enough lumber to build. So that's how far off we are. And a lot of, there's, we consider and point our fingers. The Wall Street Journal article is directly tied to the mills. The question that article is drawing to is, are the mills now not so much slowing down production, but holding back production to keep the price, to drive the price up? I think the National Association of Homebuilders would probably say, yes, that's what we're seeing. There's other things involved in that as well, as far as tariffs. I'll be honest with you. I don't get it. I really don't get it. We have one of the hottest real estate markets. Rates now on a 30-year went below 3% this past week. I think I saw a 2.8 or 2.6 on a 30-year note, and then I think I saw a 2.3 to a 2.5 on a 15-year note. People are buying houses left and right. And the bidding wars and everything that you hear, it's happening right here in Wilmington.
It's obviously been a red-hot market, particularly in our area, for a number of years, and that's evident everywhere. I mean, no matter where you go in the country, even in places where people are fleeing by tens of thousands, up in the Northeast, per se, they are having a housing shortage in that the inventory is just not there, and we're unable to keep up with the demand, and that creates this situation here where we see prices go up at a time where we hear a lot from our elected officials about affordable housing. Well, we're not really, and not that they should be involved in everything, meaning the government, but it seems as if we talk a lot out of both sides of our mouth, and at the end of the day, it's the middleman, the everyday working man that suffers the most from all of this.
Well, it's middle housing. I mean, that's kind of the term that's being used. We have the wealthier section of the market, so to speak, the luxury portfolio more of the market, and then, of course, we have more of the multifamily, the apartments. But we are struggling to find that middle housing. And that's not just here in Wilmington, North Carolina. I don't want your listeners to think that it's just within the confines of once you dump off of I-40 into Wilmington. It's nationwide. Going back to these price increases, last Friday, Thursday and Friday, our builders, and this is probably not just here as well, but a lot of the, of course, it gets sourced from the trees to the production of the mill, from the mill to the lumberyard down to the builder, and, of course, ultimately to the builder, to the consumer. Yeah. They had a price increase last Thursday and Friday come through the market of roughly almost anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000. Some of that was lumber related. Some of it was also other materials related. That's the other thing that's happening too, is that this is not just a lumber conversation. Simple stuff as far as LVLs. And so I'll explain what an LVL typically, when you're looking at a framing of a new house or a new construction, is going to be that main structured beam that goes maybe across, say, the garage. It's that laminated beam that has a bunch of different OSB parts and everything put together, basically. The glue to put those together is being hard to find now. I had a builder the other day that is looking to put a paint color, went to Sherwin-Williams, found the base white. Everyone who's gone into Home Depot and Lowe's and is, Sherwin-Williams and all the other paint places, they understand you go get the base white and then you got to put a pigment in there. They didn't have the pigment. They didn't have the pigment to create the color that the builder needed to go put the finishing touches on the wall to get the house complete. That's where we are. That's where we are right now. It is going all the way down from just the framing section now down to every little thing in the house.
My whole thing about this is it's hard to believe, but it's reality is that we shut down everything for basically the better part of a year.
Right.
Different states doing different things. Some states have been open for the better part of the last 8 or 9 months, and ironically, those states are doing okay from an economic standpoint, but still tough to get materials because if your window manufacturers out of Pennsylvania, you're getting your lumber from Canada. Right. These places are in a different situation. I just don't understand, and for the life of me, and I don't know if you can explain it either, and I don't think you can. It's more of a rhetorical question: how people could think that you're just going to turn the switch off, and then think that we're just going to flip the switch back on, and everything is just going to go back to like we hit the pause button and then we hit play again.
Well, I can tell you firsthand, the construction industry, you can't do that. It doesn't work. Never has, never will. Talking to one of my builders yesterday, he was very frustrated. He's lumber prices just went back up. Pricing went back up. They just initiated a price increase last week and put that into their new contracts. And then price increases come out Thursday and Friday over the weekend. And then he's looking at another $5,000 that he's got to basically, that he didn't increase to. He's at $40,000 plus of increase in pricing. And he's to the point where, and I kind of asked him, I said, well, can you've got contracts. You've got enough contracts. Can you stop? That's kind of what's going on right now is people are saying, well, just stop building. If everyone was to stop building and it would catch up. Well, the problem with that, Joe, is that once that builder was to do that, they would never get their trades back. Everyone would leave, and then the folks and the families and everybody that is dependent upon those jobs, they would leave that builder, and he would never be able to get them back. And that's the light switch. Everyone thinks you can just go in and turn the light switch off on the construction market. It doesn't work that way. I think what's going to happen here, I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm not an economist by any means, but there's starting to be talks about a sharp downturn, and I think this is an unsustainable market of what we have right now.
And that's a shame because, just a year ago, a little further than a year ago, we were on, an upward trend when it comes to economic movement in our country. People earning more as far as the wages go, particularly people in the lower and middle income, brackets. And now everything is just reversed. And I get it, first couple of months of this whole thing, people very fearful and skeptical. But to think that, our government is the reason, in large part, why a lot of us are in this situation. The people that are elected to represent us and work for us are really the sole reason why we're at this juncture.
Well, and I mean, I think that's why you saw such the lobbying actions at the national level, the state level here locally, what we did and across the state. And across here, as far as locally within the region, to make sure that our industry was considered essential wherever we could. The thing that's keeping this going, so to speak, is the fact that the mortgage rates are so low. And so, for example, if you can come in and the price went up from $400,000 to $450,000, $50,000 price increase over the last 2 months, and you're sitting out here trying to find a house. And, you have the bidding wars, you have the sight unseen, you have the I'll pay more, we'll pay cash. You can keep the $2,000 if the deal falls through. I mean, there are all sorts of things going on in the market right now on the due diligence fees. But what's, I really think, helping the market and continuing to really accelerate it and keep it moving is the fact of that with the mortgage rates so low, money is cheap. And so the consumer can weather the storm of that price increase. Technically, if you didn't have the price increase, they can move up probably another $50,000 in that next market of house. But what they're doing is being able to weather that storm right off the bat. Then, of course, we had a reval. So equity in homes has gone up tremendously because of the market. So both of those things, I think, right now are really helping our localized market. And it's a great market. It really is. There's just nothing out there to sell.
Nothing to sell. I think people, as you said, may have seen the reval and say, hey, maybe I could, trade this in and, get another nicer car. But, they find out that, as they explore those options, that the nicer car might not be available because, people are willing to go a little extra further as far as what they'll pay. The cash that they can front if they're, selling their home elsewhere where property, is more expensive. And, it's kind of a rock and a hard place that we're in at this point, and there's no kind of way in which we can punch our way out of this thing. It's just a slow moving type of thing going on.
And we've touched a little bit. This is all kind of touching on new construction. We look at that other equation from what you're saying as far as kind of just going to stay put for a while. But I've got equity. I've built equity into the house. I can see it. The market has helped me build equity into the house. You know what? Let's go in and put that sunroom on. Let's go ahead and do that renovation. Let's do that bathroom, that kitchen. And that's great because I've never seen a market where the new home construction market and the remodeling renovation market is going just as strong, neck and neck, so to speak. But the challenge still exists. Just because you're in a renovation and remodeling doesn't mean that the same lumber supply, there's a different lumber supply for you. And so the same challenges are existing on that side. And they have a little bit tougher challenge because you never quite know what's behind that wall when you get into things. And, you're trying to update. And the challenge with updating is that you're trying to go to that new faucet, that new sink, that new bathtub, that new tile, that new flooring. Can you source it? And then can you get it here?
Cameron Moore is the executive officer of the Wilmington Cape Fear Homebuilders Association. Twice a month, we talk issues related to the industry, along with growth and development in our area, the role the local Homebuilders Association plays in all of this. Cameron, you said you had some positive news, that you didn't want to be, negative Nancy all morning. So why not go to the extreme other side of this whole thing and bring us some news? Because I know, legislatively there's some things going on up at the General Assembly that may impact your industry here in the city of Wilmington. For instance, their full version of the new land development code has been unveiled as well. So there are a number of different things that may turn the page on this story again as we move to the second portion of this segment. So why don't you give us something that we can take into the top of the hour news break with maybe balance this conversation out here a bit.
Sure. I mean, we talked a little bit about labor. We've talked about labor since I came on the first show here. So 2 years almost coming into this. And we're seeing some positive things. CTEC has had some positive movement with the number of students that are getting interested into the construction academy. That construction academy is going to be getting off the ground coming up next school semester, coming into the fall. Cape Fear Community College has stepped up and going to be providing the resources, the teaching elements for that. We actually just got done helping the school out, not last weekend, but the weekend before, first weekend of Parade of Homes, which, by the way, was a success. And helping them come out and build some benches for the students, and actually had students there volunteering. We volunteered our time and just kind of, here's a saw. Here's how you utilize a saw. Here's drills. Here's impact drills. Here's how you utilize that. So that was a really interesting, good, quite frankly, a very a fun day, but also a very educational portion of what we're doing. But then on the other side of it is that Cape Fear Community College is working to put some apprenticeships in place, one of which is an HVAC apprenticeship. And we're starting to see they've put in the application process to the state. It's kind of a state-run, sanctioned kind of apprenticeship. We've been in the background a little bit in those conversations, and we want to do our part as HBA to help that along. So some positive things there on the labor side. Again, Joe, we've talked about it. It's incremental, small wins for the labor. That's what we have to do. Incremental, small things out there.
Are we ever going to be able to catch up with the demand, whether it be, as you said, with the material shortage, people telling them, just stop building. Yeah, we'll see how that works. And then with the labor shortage as well, are we ever going to be able to make it? Seems like our issues just continue to grow and grow and grow, and we rarely are able to make a dent on any of these things.
Well, and you look at now, you're going around town and you're looking at all the restaurants, and every one you go into has hiring, and it's the same thing with that industry as well. The thing that I have seen as long as I've been in this for 20 plus years is that the real estate market, typically in the construction market, it will correct. But when it corrects, it sometimes overcorrects, and then it recorrects from that overcorrect. And then that's when you start to see things kind of settle down, so to speak, smooth out on the graph line. Will that happen this year? I don't know. Will we catch up this year? I doubt it. Will we see materials and the overall demands and everything? I think we're going to see those demands until the end of the year. I'm now hearing talk that we could see these price increases and material delays into next year. So we went positive, then we went negative.
It just brings you right back to it, because it's really hard to navigate it and understand that so many people have been doing so well for themselves, particularly in your industry, that's from top to bottom. The builder themselves, all the way down to the guy laying the bricks. Everyone making money, and
I think there is the silver lining though, and I don't want to be the Debbie Downer today. I mean, the silver lining is that the around the region, we're seeing the planning departments and the planning boards, and in some fashions the commissioners, we're seeing more projects come before these boards now. We're seeing rezonings happening, which means that developers are getting out there and starting that process of getting land available, getting it entitled and everything to where it can start to be into the housing stock. They can place it into the housing stock portfolio so builders can start actually having more lots available. That's the other thing. We really struggled coming into the pandemic with lot availability. We didn't have a lot in the market. And so now we're seeing that come to fruition. So I think that's going to help as well. That's the challenge. I mean, we talk about it, if you're trying to get in real estate right now and become a realtor, I kind of question, well, what are you going to sell? There's really not a ton of stuff out there on the market to sell. And that's what we've got to do. If we don't have housing stock as far as new construction where somebody can actually take and move out of that existing house and go to the next house and then open up the additional housing stock below them, I mean, that's kind of how this works. That's how this whole kind of ball gets rolling. And that's where we're kind of stuck at in that middle housing right now.
Twice a month, we talk construction related to growth and development within the industry here in southeastern North Carolina, some of the trends that we see statewide and around the country, how that impacts us back here on the coast with Cameron Moore. He's the executive officer of the Wilmington Cape Fear Hombuilders Association. Twice a month, Fridays, we spend an hour on this topic. It's one of the hottest discussions in our region, given that we've been growing at an unforeseen pace for the better part of the last 10 or so years. And the projections, even despite the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows in our economy nationally, the projections are still that this place is going to boom for the next 10, 15 years. And there may be a downturn, as we predicting maybe just a bit here in the next several months. But as people continue, I think, a lot of people in this country, and as people continue to see and visit our area, quickly fall in love with it the way many of us have. Once you arrive here, given what the circumstances are in places like the Northeast, in fact, had someone move in just across the street from us, from Ohio, just the other day. Even from the West Coast, people finding their way here to North Carolina for various reasons. And, one, great quality of life, relatively low cost of living still. And I think that's, at the end of the day, as far as the tax burden goes, as far as just generally, how cheap it is compared to places like California, Illinois, Ohio even, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, all up in the Northeast, that as long as we can continue to keep it in that realm as far as the quality and cost of life on that lower end, people are still going to come here.
So, Joe, you have the positive news today.
That's it. That's
it. I mean, we still have a very desirable location as far as the Wilmington area and the Wilmington region, and people are moving here because of that.
With that said, I would just encourage all of you, as I did yesterday as I was moving it. So the beginning of my week, one of my first thoughts was of Cameron Moore and our conversation that was going to
scary thing
at the end of the week. And one of the things as to why we are attracting people to the area is because of the natural beauty we have. Unless you're driving around one of these corridors where you just see the intersection filled with litter, which is something that has really chapped my hide over the course of the last couple of months, because as I have traveled all across the country, whether it be on the road or through the air and then on a bus to different parts of the country, you just don't see that in many places. And I took it upon myself yesterday, folks, because I was tired of driving into my neighborhood, which also serves as an entrance to a park, and there's just litter everywhere. So I spent part of my day yesterday cleaning up everyone else's crap that you just pour and dump out of your car, or it flies off of a 18-wheeler truck as they take it to the landfill. So I spent yesterday cleaning up people's garbage. How about that? My community service for the day. And I drove by there this morning with some pride. I said, man, that looks good.
I'm proud of you. I mean, I think that's the key with this area is that we are a small, tight-knit community. and the community really rises to the occasion. I mean, you look at it when we have natural disasters, when we have, the restaurants opening back up. People really, they saw the marketing to that, flocking back to the restaurants to help the wait staff, to help all the folks that are involved in the service industry. I foresee this summer with the tourism industry coming back full throttle.
And all I can say is let's exercise patience out there. As Cameron mentioned, as we have said through the last few weeks, help wanted signs everywhere. We've heard, even I think I saw a story up in Surf City, a 20-year family-run restaurant had to close its doors because they don't have anyone to work.
That's a shame.
Hour and a half waits, partly because of capacity limits that are still in place, in addition to the fact that they don't have maybe the staff, or the entire staff just didn't show up for work that day. They got to shut their doors.
The positive news on Cinco de Mayo, and I don't know if it happened on Cinco de Mayo, I noticed that the salsa bar is now open, Jeff. So we're getting back to normal when the salsa bar gets open.
Well, let's make sure that we exercise patience, though, when they're unable to, get you at a table immediately upon walking in, or because, your meal might be delayed because of the staff shortages. Let's keep these people in mind, particularly these business owners that have been gone through enough over the past year and now having to deal with another issue related to this shutdown and labor shortage. Cameron Moore with the Wilmington Cape Fear Homebuilders Association is with us. Our twice-a-month Construction Connection segment continues after this on the Big Talker FM.
Keeping Ocean Isle informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
I'm Rich Thomason. The latest jobs report is in, and payrolls did grow last month, but not nearly as much as expected. 266,000 new jobs, the unemployment rate edging up 0.1%.
The number of jobs added last month is sharply lower than in March, and a sign that some businesses are struggling to find enough workers as the economic recovery strengthens. With viral cases declining and states and localities easing restrictions, businesses have added jobs for 4 straight months. Still, the unemployment rate ticked up to 6.1% from 6% in March.
Correspondent Jeremy House. Police in San Antonio were acting on a tip when they went to a truck stop to check out the trailer of a big rig. They found it packed with people, apparently illegal immigrants being smuggled into the country. And San Antonio Police Lieutenant Jesse Salome says some of them got away.
As soon as the park officer went to contact the driver, the back door opened and several people left from the back portion of the rig.
The audio from KSAT TV. The latest school shooting, this one in Rigby, Idaho, left 3 people with non-life-threatening injuries and a 6th grade girl in big trouble.
Once the investigation is completed, we will be filing appropriate charges, possibly including 3 counts of attempted murder.
Jefferson County Prosecuting Attorney Mark Taylor heard on KIFI TV. Authorities say 2 students and a school custodian were shot. A teacher disarmed the shooter and held her for police. After an hours-long standoff at a bank, 5 hostages were released or managed to get away unharmed. It happened in St. Cloud, Minnesota. A 35-year-old man said to have a lengthy criminal history is under arrest. On Wall Street, ahead of the opening bell, Dow futures are down 15 points. NASDAQ futures up 173 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Pounds and pounds of fur. Our hairballs have hairballs.
Our cat Mama, she's 10 years old. She has dandruff and an oily coat.
I have 2 cats, Vicky and Daisy. Daisy sheds like crazy.
If you love your pets as much as I do, you want to do what's best for them to live long, healthy, happy lives.
DINOVITE.com.
I just tried this wonderful Catalicious Dynavite for cats, and my cat has been on it for 2 weeks. She is not scratching anymore. She's not chewing anymore. It is just the best.
I was thrilled when I heard Dynavite for cats was coming out because I had seen the changes in my dog. To introduce my cats to Dynavite, I took the advice from Dynavite and put their food on top of just a scoop in the bowl, just to get them used to it, because I know if I even switch one little thing, they put their nose up to it. There was not one problem.
Dynavite for life. You won't believe how happy your cat will be.
DINOVITE.com.
Reports from the West Bank say Israeli troops have fatally shot 2 Palestinians following an attack on an Israeli checkpoint.
The bodies of 2 Palestinian men could be seen close to an Israeli police base. It lies in an area between the occupied West Bank and northern Israel. The Israeli army says 3 Palestinians with homemade rifles had opened fire at security forces who responded, killing 2 and wounding 1. There was no comment from Palestinian officials. This week in the West Bank saw a 19-year-old Israeli religious student killed by a Palestinian gunman and a Palestinian boy aged 16 shot dead by Israeli forces during clashes as they mounted a large-scale search for the suspect.
The BBC's Tom Bateman. Britain's governing Conservative Party making further inroads in the north of England, winning a special election in the post-industrial town of Hartlepool for a parliamentary seat that the opposition Labour Party has held for decades. Breaking news and analysis, townhall.com. A GOP congressman warns Republicans against party infighting that he fears could thwart their attempt to regain control of Congress next year.
Congressman Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin says the Republican message right now should focus on missteps by Speaker Pelosi and the House Democrats.
They have misinterpreted a very narrow election victory for a mandate.
Gallagher says the average American doesn't want, in his words, a radical progressive agenda rammed down their throats.
Any second that we are distracted from that, or shooting at ourselves is really a missed opportunity.
Gallagher tells the Salem Radio Network party infighting distracts from what should be an easy argument for Republicans to make. Bob Agnew reporting.
Alabama lawmakers have given final approval to a medical marijuana bill, capping a long and emotional debate. The House of Representatives approving the bill. The Senate passed it. It now goes to the governor. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
All right, we're back here on the Big Talker FM as we continue our Construction Connection segment with the Wilmington Cape Fear Homebuilders Association. Twice a month, we talk issues related to the construction industry in our area, some of the trends across the state and around the world. Around the world. We talk how it impacts us when it comes to the amount of lumber that we buy and consume from, Canada, for instance, or the different types of parts and other sorts of components that are needed for various trades that come from all over the world as it relates to the supply chain. I know that we've highlighted those conversations over the past year. Conversations that you hear nowhere else until, of course, maybe the national media gets around to it. And by then, we've been discussing it at length for the better part of, 7 or 8 months, as Cameron mentioned earlier in the program, based on the situation surrounding the rise in the prices of lumber. This was 8 months ago we started discussing this. Cameron Moore, once again, the executive officer of the Wilmington Cape Fear Homebuilders Association. Across the state, of course, the legislative session continues. We've been getting updates throughout the course of the session from our elected officials, whether it be in this area or other places around the state. We had Senator Danny Britt on earlier this week, along with State Senator Michael Lee. They both provided some great information and perspective as far as where we're at within the State General Assembly. And Cameron, as I bring you back in, there are some things of interest related to the construction industry as this crossover period is upon us in the legislature. The crossover period, for folks that may not know what that entails, basically you file a bill in your respective chamber. You have the State House, the State Senate. You file a bill during the session in your respective chamber. If it doesn't make it out of your chamber and cross over into the Senate or the House, vice versa, then it will not be heard this session and will be pushed down the docket for later on. You'll have to do it all over again for the next time our lawmakers convene up in Raleigh. So that's where we're at. It's been a very busy week for our state lawmakers up in our state capital city of Raleigh. And Cameron, as far as some of the proposals that are out there that may impact your industry, I know there are a number of bills that have been added to the list for committee hearings and other notifications that you're receiving on a daily basis.
There is, Joe, and I think you kind of nailed the whole crossover deadline really well. House bill needs to get over to the Senate. Senate bill needs to get over to the House in its most simplest form. And so this week and next week, it is the whole entire legislature. I mean, they are just scrambling right now to get things across. And some bills don't have to meet crossover deadlines, but there's a lot of them that do. And some of the things we're looking at, I know the North Carolina Hombuilders Association has been lobbying on our behalf, and we've had some input on as well. One of which, and we typically see this, is a 2021 Building Code and Development Regulation Reform Bill. It's House Bill 489. There's a Senate bill, companion bill, Senate Bill 478. We typically, as you know, I've always talked about the building code is always kind of in process of being changed. It's always kind of in flux, so to speak. And because of that, and because of interpretations, a lot of times we can clean up those interpretations. We can clean up little nuances in that building code as far as doing a building code regulatory reform. The other thing, though, with building code regulatory reform is that we can fix problems that exist where, I dare say, local governments are abusing the system, so to speak. Case in point, a couple years ago was permit window timeframes as far as approval. There was cases where people would submit for a permit and wouldn't get it in months. So there was a 15-day implementation on that. 2-day turnaround on inspections. So some things to create some efficiency and some sense of urgency for our local governments. We don't see that too much here as far as trying to do it on purpose, so to speak. We see it more when we have just staffing issues and stuff like that, and we work with our local governments to work through that. Then we look at some other stuff too. House Bill 273, Modify Builders Inventory Tax Exclusion. That is a taxing deferment as far as the property tax. Single-family homes. This was a bill done in 2000, I believe, in 17 and carry over into 18, and this is to modify it because townhomes, the Department of Revenue did not recognize that townhomes fit the definition that was in the original bill. So we're coming in to put townhomes in there as well. House Bill 344, System Development Fees Update. We talked about the whole H2Go fees, I think about 3 months ago, and that changeover. This is modifying how the equation went, or is to go, so to speak, and how those fees can be calculated. I think it tightens up how they can be calculated. We've had some challenges with some of our areas going through the study that's required because of the last piece of legislation dealing with system development fees, and I think this starts to tighten that area a little bit around those increases and how that fee is calculated. And then the bill that everyone from the planning departments have gotten wound up about is increased housing opportunities, House Bill 401, Senate Bill 349. And it's called basically to allow duplexes, townhomes, triplexes, a lot of the different housing types, anywhere that there will be a single family district that is permitted by right. Now, the local governments, I've heard, have framed this, that this gets rid of single family zoning. That is not what this does. What it does is it allows all of those other diversity of housing types to be permitted in any district that allows for single-family homes by right. In other words, they would go into those districts as another by right. As you can imagine, the bill was introduced and quickly saw a lot of people coming out against it, and which was kind of interesting in some respects. The bill also has in there ADUs, which are known as accessory dwelling units, to where those would be allowed by right in anywhere that has a single-family zoning district. So, we touched on it earlier in the show, the first 30 minutes, about middle housing. This bill is designed to get towards middle housing. It's designed to put into place, take away I mean, really, quite frankly, regulatory actions that are in codes across the state of North Carolina that prohibit the diversity of housing into certain zoning districts that allow for single-family housing. The bill, unfortunately, right now, as I mentioned, has had some controversy behind it, is currently parked in the rules on both sides. But there may be some things coming with that bill as well. So we'll to be seen.
Very busy time up in Raleigh right now, as Cameron mentioned, and as we heard this week from State Senators Danny Britt and Michael Lee. Great to have them contributing to our show here on The Big Talker, and Cameron as well here this morning. And we'll keep abreast to some of the news related to construction and these pieces of legislation and the proposals as they've been laid out up at the state capitol. Other topics of interest as we bring things back local for the last few minutes of our Construction Connection segment. In April, FEMA released some new details outlining their risk rating, which is an initiative to help transform the National Flood Insurance Program. What did we find from this report that was released by the Federal Emergency Management Agency?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge with FEMA is that it's always been underfunded, and of course, when we have a natural disaster, whether it be flooding or what have you, you know, they are the agency, the governmental agency, the federal agency that is going to react to that. What we're looking at with this new framework is basically how FEMA comes in and rates a property's flood risk and then prices that flood insurance. A lot of people would say that FEMA has been underfunded because of the insurance itself is, in some respects, cheap. Now, Biggert Waters, that act that happened roughly, I think, about 4 years ago, changed that perspective. It still allowed for some grandfathering. So, for example, if I had a house right now that is below the base flood elevation and is in a flood zone, and as long as I own that house, I'm grandfathered. But if I was to sell it to you, Joe, you would see the actual rate come into compliance basically really quick. And so you would see that insurance rate jump up really fast. The challenge with this is that we're going to see where some policyholders see some immediate premium decrease, and then we're going to see some policyholders see some increases. Now, what we're doing, we're actually partnering with our some of our other organizations that we do a lot of work with, our Cape Fear Realtors, the Jacksonville Board of Realtors, the Topsail Island Association of Realtors, and the Brunswick County Association of Realtors. We're going to be partnering with them later this year, actually in July, to put together a panel presentation on this to kind of really update our memberships. I mean, we need to understand it from the construction side, but we also need to understand it from the realtor side when we're buying and people are buying and selling property, because that's where that really comes in, that conversation comes into the transaction.
Folks, for those who live here in the city of Wilmington, whether you live, work, or play here, this new land development code that's also been released back in April from the city, their full version of this LDC is something that we've highlighted the last number of programs as far as the process of this all taking shape. Maybe just a quick history lesson, if you could, sure, as far as why they're moving forward with this new code and with this full version now unveiled, what it means for Wilmingtonians and those who work and play here.
Sure. So timeline-wise, roughly about 2.5, 3 years ago now, you had two comp plans that were adopted. City adopted their comp plan, City of Wilmington, in New Hanover County. New Hanover County's worked to change some zoning districts, add some zoning districts, is now going through some technical amendments as they move through. The city has been working behind the scenes to basically do a total revamp. We've touched on it before. Both codes, the city and the county, their codes were, historically 35 years old with text amendments that got them to this point. It was time for a rewrite, and that's essentially what this is. There's, some okay things in the code. There's some things we could probably live with. There's some things that we're certainly challenged with, and there's some things that we've got to still go through and see how it reacts to the market. The cities is going to be a little bit different in the sense that we're looking at less land for building, so more infill development, how does tree regulations, site-specific regulations, commercial regulations, signage, sidewalks, multi-use paths, how does that all work? Does the city play a role in some of that infrastructure? It's a little bit different than the county, but as I always say, too, the market doesn't see city-county lines. The market goes where the market goes. And so what we're attempting to try to do is marry up some of the city's code where it comes next to the county, so we don't have this, just quite frankly, weird construction when you say, well, why is this building like this with all of this on there and this building has nothing?
Yeah, well, you would think that the
Or vice
county,
versa.
you would think that the county and the city would be working kind of hand in hand in this sort of thing. But it's something that seems as if, even though they're different counties, so to speak, in Brunswick and Pender counties, it seems as if we have a hard time getting everyone together. There's rarely these sorts of discussions, at least held publicly, where you've got the thriving town of Leland and ports of northern Brunswick County. Areas up towards Scotts Hill and into Pender County, you rarely see all these entities getting together to really, and I get it, everyone's got their own kind of thing, but wouldn't it be better if we're kind of unified in the way we want this to go, or at least let's hash out these sorts of differences, and then we can provide a kind of a clear perspective, mainly, I think, for the residents who live here, just to have a better idea as to what our mission is and how we can actually make improvements to some of these things that we have concerns about.
Well, and I think that's where we saw the new zoning changes of Chapter 160D come in, where they took the city's zoning statutes and the county zoning statutes, merged them together. We're seeing consistency in that as far as definitions and other things, as far as processes that will not only play out in the city of Wilmington and New Hanover County, but it plays out in any jurisdiction that obviously has the planning perspective. To touch on that too, Joe, I think the affordability question that's been going on. We have the city council, joint city council, county commissioners meeting that happened roughly about a week and a half ago. Presentation from the joint task force. We're looking at those recommendations, and I know that there has been a subcommittee formed to talk about those, as well as WAVE. June the 10th, I believe, is when both boards will come back together to hear those recommendations. I would argue that whether it's accessory dwelling units, public-private partnerships, water and sewer, and really more in the land use side, looking at having some of the similar regulations and policy decisions in both of those ordinances in the cities and the counties, because there again, that's how we're going to be able to make some small incremental steps on this affordability.
Cameron Moore is with the Wilmington Cape Fear Homebuilders Association. Once again, it's part of our twice a month Construction Connection segment on Fridays, just after 8:30 for about an hour. We talk all things related to his industry. As we know, 3 out of every 5 jobs in our local economy touched in some way, shape, or form by construction. And, there's some tough hurdles ahead, no doubt, that we're trying to jump over and hoops to leap through to keep, one, this place growing, but two, in a way in which that, is not so detrimental to so many different trades and jobs out there. Some of it beyond our control, obviously, with some of the shutdowns over the past year. And I think, to circle back to it, that's the saddest part out of all of this is that not only in our region, everywhere across the country, people lost so much. And it's different if you're making bad choices, you have bad business practices, and things shut you down for those reasons. But by and large, we were humming along pretty well before all this mess hit us last February.
Yeah, and I mean, from the real estate side, we're still humming along pretty well. I think we've got to stay positive. We got to, continue to put, look at housing stock on the sides. We've got to continue to put housing stock, land and lots, so to speak, in the process of creating a buildable envelope, so the builders have something to build on. People are moving here every day. We've touched on it. Desirable location. That allows for our realtor friends, obviously, to have something to sell and to start that process. And we'll start to see some of the juggernauts, as I guess I would call it, with the housing woes right now in our area. Just being able to have something to where you have, enough in the portfolio to sell. I mean, I think last time when we had Ann on here and we had our economic report, we were existing homes, or just homes in general, were 21 days on the market. It's from average here in New Hanover County. That's crazy.
I mean, as soon as they go up, they're gone.
Yeah,
that's it. I mean, like you said, bidding wars, people coming to the table with all sorts of different, tricks and trunkets to say, hey, I want to be at the top of that list.
Good problems to have in some sense, but we've got to really get some housing stock on the ground.
And like you said, a lot of folks out there just hesitant to even, for the builders themselves to move forward and say, all right, well, we're going to enter into these contracts. I'm sure, sure there are some side notes and some stipulations to these contracts
A
that
lot
weren't
of the
necessarily in there maybe a year ago.
Yeah, a lot of the builders have put clauses in there. It's called basically what's known as an escalation clause. And in some sense, I mean, they may have a contract and say, look, we're not going to be able to get to your house in 8 months to start building it. And the escalation clause, and they continue to see that, and they could walk away from the contract. Right. And that may help the builder, as much as I hate to say it, because then they can actually reprice the house.
Cameron Moore with the Wilmington Cape Fear Homebuilders Association, once again with us twice a month, talk all things related to the construction industry here in the Cape Fear region. Cameron, thanks so much, man. And your kid got a new job, first job ever, from what I could hear, and in the restaurant industry. So as I said, exercise patience out there when you head over to her place of business and she tells you it's a 2-hour wait because we don't got enough cooks in the back or enough servers to get you the food in a timely manner. It's not her fault.
Right,
exactly. It's the government's fault.
I'm just happy she's going to be able to put a little gas in her gas tank.
Gas in the gas tank, and I've recommended how we can go further in those life lessons. She wants something in the backyard, a pool for the summer. Well, there's a way you can get that. It's called saving up your money, taking out a line of credit on daddy, and then having to have you pay it back plus interest. Life lessons in the Moore household.
There you go.
Here in the summer of 2021.
There you go. Life lessons.
Cameron,
maybe that'll be our new show.
Life. Cameron, thanks a lot, man.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good weekend.
And you do as well. Great to catch up with Cameron Moore again with the Wilmington Cape Fear Homebuilders Association, part of our Construction Connection segment, only here on the Big Talker FM.
Sometimes I feel I've got to
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint Faith and Personal Development. Join us for Wake Up Our Faith, a real conversation about living out your faith between Sundays, streaming live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Catch the replay every Saturday and Sunday at 8 a.m. on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM. Stop by and visit us on the web at uprint.life.
Folks, we all know ongoing road construction and traffic can weigh heavy on your vehicle. Since 2006, O'Leary's Automotive Repair has provided comprehensive repair services at affordable prices to get you back on the road in no time. Their ASE-certified technicians will help you find a cost-effective repair and maintenance alternatives. O'Leary's has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina, practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate. Please give us a call at 910-332-0721 or visit us on our website, which is www.humphreysfirm.law. You can also listen to me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Government has become too big, too overtaxing, and is constantly overregulating every aspect of your life.
If you agree with that, tune in to Consumer Choice Radio every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM with me, Yael Ossowski.
And me, David Clement. For an hour, you'll get expert analysis on what the government is sinking its teeth into next and how you, as a consumer, can push back.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
Teachers and parents, the North Carolina Symphony is here to support you as you carry on the education of your children and students. Take your kids on a free virtual field trip to the Symphony with a virtual education concert and companion student book. Go on a virtual journey to learn what makes music music with music by William Grant Still, Beethoven, Brahms, and more. Access the free video and student book with password 1932 at ncsymphony.org/virtual.
I am State Farm Agent Rob Renz, and I want to help you get to a better place. Visit us online at ilminsurance.com. That's ilminsurance.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Have something to say but didn't get a chance to call in? Give us a ring on the Big Talker Talkback line at 910-275-5515, and we'll play it back over the air. Leave us a message. That's the Big Talker Talkback line at 910-275-5515.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. A school in Southport will be closed today after a fire last night. It happened at Southport Christian School on Flagship Avenue. According to a post on the school's Facebook page, the main building was on fire in the back half of the elementary building. Assistant Fire Chief Todd Coring said a janitor working at the school initially spotted the fire. Coring says no one else was in the building at the time and no injuries have been reported. A Brunswick County man has been convicted of first-degree murder for a shooting in 2017. On December 8, 2017, 24-year-old Eugene Powell shot and killed Anthony Scott Beers in the Longwood community. Powell ran from law enforcement for 4 days before he was caught. Brunswick County Sheriff's deputies arrested Powell in an apartment in Charlotte. The judge sentenced Powell to life without parole. Governor Roy Cooper making a visit to a vaccination site in New Hanover County yesterday. The governor applauded New Hanover County and the city of Wilmington for their vaccination efforts. The governor says more than half of adults in the state have received at least one dose of the vaccine, and he says we are going to emerge from this pandemic stronger than we were before. The governor says the pandemic has highlighted inequities that existed before COVID-19, like access to high-speed internet and the need for accessible health insurance. And a surfer from Wrightsville Beach is riding his way onto a national TV show. Mason Barnes, who is up for a Guinness World Record for the largest wave ever surfed, is one of the 14 people who are competing on a new ABC show called The Ultimate Surfer. The 8-episode series gathers some of the world's greatest up-and-coming surfers to train and live together as they battle it out at the World's Surf League's state-of-the-art surf ranch in California. The 2-hour premiere will air on Monday, August 23rd and Tuesday, August 24th on WWAY ABC. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Well, today we're going to see another chance for isolated showers and even thunderstorms to develop. Some of the stronger ones could bring down some gusty winds and some lightning associated with those. But as we go throughout the day today, temperatures are going to top off in the low to middle 70s, a few degrees cooler than where we should be for this time of year under mostly cloudy skies. Then late tonight, we lose the clouds and temperatures drop down into the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here, your host of the Lynn with Ben Show, live on 106.7 FM, the Big Talker Radio, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. We talk all things mortgage and real estate related, and we'd love to have you join us this Saturday, 9 a.m.
I took a walk around the world to ease my troubled mind. I left my body lying somewhere in the sands of time. But I watched the world float to the dark side of the moon. I feel there's
All right, as we head into the final half hour of our program, monthly snapshot from the Labor Department across the country for the month of April. Hiring slowed last month as businesses struggled to keep pace with booming demand from consumers. U.S. employers added just 266,000 jobs in the month of April, the weakest month of job growth since January. The unemployment rate rose a tenth of a percentage point. Labor market still 8.2 million fewer workers on payrolls than there were before the pandemic. Job gains for March were also revised down from 916,000 to 770,000. We're heading in the wrong direction, folks. Some employers, as we've highlighted, complain that they're having difficulty filling jobs, even though millions of people are still out of work. You have to wonder why. Portions of our program presented to you by our friends at Bugno Pest Control. In fact, my buddy DJ and his dad, family-owned and operated business. DJ was at the house yesterday around the exterior of our home. Because remember, what was it last year? In the middle of the pandemic, we had a little rodent in our back shed that found its way in, ended up inside the hood of my wife's interior, and bit off and chewed through the fuel injection line. Not once, but twice. Well, he's no longer. And that's due in part to our friends at Bugno Pest Control, the #1 pest control company in Wilmington, rated by Home Advisor for 3 years in a row. Put Bugno's 20 years of experience to work for you. Locally owned and operated. Personally know them. Bugno Pest Control at 910-367-2501. That's 910-367-2501. Their website is bugnopestcontrol.com. That's Bugno, B-U-G-N-O, pestcontrol.com. In addition to the work they do in controlling all sorts of pests and little critters, I also want to point your attention to their mosquito control formula. As the warm summer months arrive, mosquitoes can be a pain in the rear end. If you're trying to host a party in the backyard, you've got some standing water that you haven't necessarily cleared out, a breeding ground for mosquitoes, and their mosquito pest control formula will keep you and your family safe and comfortable. Get mosquito control services from the experts at Bugno Pest Control. 20 years, locally owned and operated right here in the Wilmington area. The #1 pest control company here by Home Advisor for 3 years in a row. Their number again, 910-367-2501 at bugnopestcontrol.com. We're awaiting our friend Yael Ossowski here in just a few minutes as he joins us twice, or every Friday rather, during our final segment of the week as part of the Consumer Choice Center. The Consumer Choice radio show airs Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker FM. Yael is back in the States after 8 months living in, well, prison, more or less. Out in Vienna, Austria, he and his family, as he made mention last week, set their sights on the old U.S. of A. They have arrived safely and enjoying some time here in the old North State with their family. He'll be coming this way in a couple of weeks. Yael, it's always a pleasure, and welcome back to the U.S. of A. I hope you're doing well here this morning on local time.
Yeah, doing great, Joe. The one thing I don't miss about the South, though, are those mosquitoes. So good to know there are solutions out there. Love it.
And that's, of course, our friends over at Bugno Pest Control who deliver those great services to Wilmingtonians and all across the Cape Fear. Yael, I got a little chuckle from you the other day when you were navigating the grocery store aisles, and you post something on Facebook, still blown away by the number of different string cheese options at the grocery store, and of course, your lovely hard seltzers, meaning the seltzers with a little bit of extra juice in it for you adults out there over the age of 21, safely and responsibly. What a beautiful country, flooding with bountiful consumer choice. You're saying that they only have one brand of string cheese in Vienna?
Pretty much across Europe. You go to the grocery store, you're only going to find, 1 or 2 brands of any product. But here I can find 18 different types of mayonnaise. I got 67 different types of barbecue sauce. I love it. I know people like Bernie Sanders say, we got too much deodorant, but I think it's great. Everybody's got exactly what they want and need, their particular flavor or taste. That stuff just doesn't exist in other parts of the world. And even a small anecdote, my parents, when they moved from Canada to North Carolina, they said very much the same thing. So, going into the North Carolina grocery store, the Winn-Dixie at the time, or Walmart or whatever, seeing all the different brands, it's just really amazing to see that there's such a diverse market out there. And we really do have a lot of choices. It's hard to realize at the end of the day because so many of us are fatigued and frustrated and go through the grind of the 9 to 5. But there we have, a small slice of heaven there at your grocery store. You can get those 8 different types of string cheese if you want, the hard seltzers. I mean, it's just amazing. I don't think a lot of people realize, Joe, and that really is thanks to great innovative companies that are delivering great products.
Well, and I think you nailed the head on the nail there in that you made mention of us spoiled, lazy Americans and how we take so much for granted. Well, could you imagine a little Sophia just having one option for her string cheese? I mean, you have to buy the correct product when it comes to her. She takes her string cheese very seriously, Yael, and oftentimes Dad isn't privy to all of the insider knowledge that Mom has. And she'll look at me as she goes into the refrigerator to pull it out of the bottom drawer. And what's this? And she says it in Italian with her hands moving in a weird way. What a 3-year-old I have at home.
Yeah, that's called, the economic term is asymmetrical knowledge. And yeah, sometimes dads are quite lacking in that, but sometimes we're able to catch up and at least understand what those preferences are.
And I'm a big fan of your hard seltzers too. I don't know about the choice that you had, in the grocery cart the other day. I'm more of a competitor of theirs in which you had, and I'm of course not giving any, word to them because they don't pay to be on our show, so I'm not going to promote a product that I'm not getting compensated for. I mean, why would I do that? This is America, right?
Very true. They're very true. I know you'd swap it out for a Blue Shark vodka or any of these other drinks, but yeah, it's just amazing to see because a lot of the regulations on alcohol, in the beginning, we would not have had this revolution. We've talked about craft beer in North Carolina, Joe, and just the different options. And there's a lot of people lobbying to make sure that those local breweries don't open. There's a lot of people lobbying to make sure that those local breweries can't get their products out on the grocery store shelves. So there's a lot of this that's in the background, and I think a lot of us don't realize that. I'm in tune to that. I know you're in tune to that. For a lot of your listeners, just so you know, there are a lot of rules out there that exist that are trying to prohibit your choice. A lot of it does stem from Raleigh and the ABC system and store, which is a whole other tale. But it's good to see at least that the things have modernized a bit and we're able to enjoy these various products.
Hey, Ella, I love nothing more than when we highlight and cover a story, and then the very next week, we get the other side. And last Friday, I can recall you and I were talking about, an effort across the country and around the world to take away some of the, intellectual property rights that private businesses have in our country for the betterment of the world, right, and of mankind. At least that's the pitch being made by Joe Biden and his administration. You told us last week that it would be a big mistake if, in fact, we forced our private companies to hand over, I'll call it the recipes, so to speak, to other countries around the world as it relates to the COVID vaccine. The Biden administration, I guess, did not take your advice as part of the piece that you put forward over at the Consumer Choice Center, and it is, in fact, now the Biden administration backing this waiver of intellectual property protection for the COVID vaccines. Why is this moving in the wrong direction?
Well, if you'll permit me a Southernism now that I'm back home, I mean, he just done did it, and huge mistake. And why is it so problematic? There are various ways to look at it. I think it's a very complex subject for a lot of people. Believe me, I was trying to pitch my op-eds on this around the country and didn't find much success because they were like, "Wow, why should we care about this?" And then, of course, it's New York Times front page, and now we're all talking about it. But hey, let's get into it. Big deal here is about intellectual property and vaccines, innovative medicines. The entire point is that many other countries in the world do not yet have vaccines. They're surely not near U.S. levels of vaccinations, which are very high. And a lot of people are sitting around scratching their heads thinking, okay, how can we improve this? There are ways to do so, but many people have put all their eggs in the basket of, well, let's just get rid of the patents, because that's really what's stopping people. And that's absolutely false. Because there are companies like Moderna, which a lot of people have received in the U.S., they released their intellectual property of their own volition throughout the course of the pandemic, and they make a very complicated vaccine. Theirs, just like the Pfizer one, is an mRNA, super new technology, totally experimental, but it has worked. And there's just no idle vaccine factories waiting around the world that can produce this stuff, that have the knowledge, the know-how, that know how to store it in these super cold freezers. It just doesn't exist. And that's why this is a wrong-headed approach. What this does is it nullifies patents and it creates a precedent. So if anyone who's listening and has a creative product, they have some copyright or trademark on a particular thing, who knows that there could be a huge ruling at the Global World Trade Organization that rules that your patent isn't valid anymore. And that's what's happening. And it's bad for innovation, all the research and development that goes into putting these drugs together and getting all of that knowledge. Yeah, you need to figure out how you're going to pay for that in the end. We can't just set up a system, in the pandemic era where everyone gets a bailout by the government. We need private businesses to have profits. They need to have some certainty from the legal system that they can actually bring those products to market, to profit from them, and then invest in other things. And that's what's so problematic about this. And the second one is a point made by Bill Gates, now who's lost half his fortune, unfortunately. It's another point. But you have this notion of all of these vaccine patents then being opened. What's to say that anyone is going to be able to produce this safely and in a way that won't detriment vaccine hesitancy? If we talked about 6 or 8 people who had blood clots because of Johnson & Johnson, imagine what will happen when you have a botched vaccine in India that kills 200,000 people because of something they cooked up in the factory. These places do not have the capability. All these companies have been searching for partners. They've signed some in places like South Africa and Australia and many other countries. But doing away with the IP rights is really just symbolism. It's the latest from the Biden administration, do everything for show. And on the back end, a lot of people are going to get hurt, and that's pretty unfortunate.
When we talk about intellectual property and giving our secrets away in a sort of way to frame this conversation, there are efforts by many adversaries around the world to in fact crack the code and get certain things and to grab certain recipes from businesses. I think of the construction industry. Given the last hour, we've been talking all about construction. There's been efforts by folks like China for a long, long time to steal these rights and then flood our market to the detriment of American companies and American consumers, in that you're getting less of a product quality-wise, at a cheaper price, and of course the consumer is going to opt for the cheaper option, but ultimately they have to go back to the store 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different times to get what they need. Same goes for business owners, contractors, and all sorts of other things. This does not just relate to intellectual property in the terms of the COVID vaccine. This is a conversation that's been going on a long time in protecting our American businesses.
Oh, and anyone knows it. If they've gone to Amazon and picked up a Bobo pair of AirPods or some other product that is essentially deconstructed from a patent in China that Apple gave them, the quality is terrible. It doesn't work as well as the actual product made by the company. And it's not just the Apples and the vaccine makers, as you mentioned. It's all the small products, and there are actually a good number of North Carolina entrepreneurs who do partner with production facilities in China. And unfortunately, in order to do so, they have to sign away some of their IP rights. They have to join a local company, and every board in China, in the Chinese Communist Party state, has a CCP member, military member or civilian, who's on the board of directors. So they have direct access to that. And it is something that does put consumers at risk. I mean, just all the stuff with fentanyl. I know that Mark Markley discusses that on his program, Recovering Hope, on the Big Talker. There's huge issues that come with all of these things that are done essentially in the black market, taking intellectual property, repurposing it, retooling it, reusing it. There's a reason that these rights exist. It's something that's granted to us actually in the Constitution. They actually do have provisions in there on trademarks and copyrights. And it's something that's very foundational. What is the point in spending hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars doing research, coming up with designs, working with all your buddies that to put some great product out there, only to have those same blueprints and designs ripped off by someone who's in Xinjiang? That's very problematic, and it definitely hurts consumers because it means we're getting subpar products. We're not getting what we thought we were, and it impacts a lot more than just our health. And I think that's something that the Biden administration definitely has not supported great American innovators with this move. It's just another thing we can put on the baddie list for the Biden administration, and hopefully something that people will remember the next time we go to the polls.
Well, with that said, we also talk a lot about incentive in our country, and we're hearing today a jobs report came out, lower than expected job numbers for the month of April, and the whole conversation surrounding the unemployment benefits, the extension, the little bump that the federal government has given to the states to provide these additional monies to folks who had been out of work for one reason or the other for the better part of the past year. We hear certain states are now replacing or working to drop the federal aid to replace it with new incentives, including return to work bonuses. The state of Montana, the freedom-loving state of South Carolina, also moving forward with these ideas to help people fill the jobs. Because you go to any area around the country, there's help wanted signs everywhere. How about incentives for our private businesses? What incentive do they have the next time there is a pandemic or an unknown virus spread across the country and around the world, impacting our economy in so many ways? What incentive do these private companies have to work with the government if they're just going to go and sell their secrets once we hit the capacity limit here in our country?
Yeah, there's so much that people ask of government every couple of years when we go vote, and politicians are often on our airwaves, or they're trying to meet us in the local shops and restaurants when they're open. But the things that really we need from government is we need protection of our liberties, and part of our liberties include the right to innovate, the right to be in the free market and try to deliver products. And when they don't protect us, and when they're just ready and willing to wave away those rights, that's incredibly problematic, and it doesn't give much confidence. Joe, it hasn't been as bad here in the United States when it comes to the shutdowns. I know it has been very tough for a lot of people. Many people did lose their jobs, lost a lot of income. At least where I was in Austria, the restaurants are only opening in 2 weeks. And because of that, the government created this huge fund where they're just sloshing billions of dollars to restaurateurs, to people who own hotels. It's just not sustainable. It just means that if you are working and you're paying taxes, you're basically subsidizing those other people who are not allowed to work. And none of those people want to be receiving those benefits. Nobody wants to be necessarily on the government trough. Nobody wants to do that. People want to be in the market. They want to provide their products. They want to provide for their family. And it creates all the worst incentives ever. And I think that's what's going to be so warping of this. I know the Biden administration is big on saying, hey, we're going to have 6% growth. Well, yeah, of course, when the economy is down 9% because everything is closed, of course you're going to have a bounce back. If we actually had better regulations, if we had good clarity from the public health officials who are leading us astray, those numbers could be even higher. And I think that's where it's really a lost opportunity. I'm still very optimistic and hopeful. I know that we can get out of this and we can pump out great products, great services, people delivering value to each and every person. But at some point, we got to realize that, especially what's happening in D.C. and some state capitals, is actually being more problematic to our recovery than anything else.
Yael, I know that you and I have been made sick to our stomach over the past couple of years in your coverage of the World Health Organization, of course, and the misguided viewpoints that they have had, which made them very ill prepared to handle a pandemic of this sort of magnitude. Instead, focusing on things like regulating e-cigarettes or big gulp type of soda products, sugary sodas around the world, thanks to a massive investment made by Michael Bloomberg into the World Health Organization. Well, our agency that oversees this sort of stuff here in the country, in the United States, not much better. I mean, the nation gripped with a public health crisis. But apparently the bureaucrats over at the FDA think that we really ought to be focusing right now is the ban on menthol-flavored cigarettes. I think that's atop the agenda for many in the country right now, right?
Yeah, and this is really just another mind-boggling thing. You think they have more to do, up there at the FDA, and I've testified there, and I've tried to give my advice and opinion, and sometimes it falls on deaf ears. But what they're doing with the menthol ban, essentially, it's looking at the cigarette market, tobacco market. We know that there are higher sales of menthol products, particularly among African Americans, and they're using that wedge of social justice to try to make a point and to try to talk about public health. But really all this means is that we're going to weaponize the government, the state, and we're going to create a black market. And all that's going to do is invite way more racial strife. It's going to just create all these terrible circumstances where police have to intervene in certain circumstances. And if you thought George Floyd was bad, this could be a lot worse. We don't need to have more laws that criminalize more things, particularly when people are just peacefully trying to buy products. There are people.
Oh, looks like we
Not really trying to huck down the guy who's got a Newport. I think that's very problematic, and at least for consumers, I mean, it's just patronizing once again, being told that we can't have this flavor or that flavor. We went through it with the vape ban. Now it's coming to menthol cigarettes. There's a lot of racial issues here that really I don't understand why they went so hard on this, and there are a good amount of African American community leaders who also recognize that. Because the more that we criminalize everything in our society, particularly individual products, the more that we invite terrible interactions between our great police and citizens. And I don't think that's what we want. Not surprised to see the Biden administration take a terrible decision here. We're going to try to keep pushing, Joe. There's a lot of work to be done, but we're trying to lobby, trying to advocate, and trying to represent a lot of people who will definitely be impacted by this.
Yael Ossowski from the Consumer Choice Center. You can hear Yael and his tag team partner, David Clement, tomorrow at 10 a.m., their latest edition of the Consumer Choice Radio Show here on the Big Talker FM. Check out his work at consumerchoicecenter.org, the global grassroots movement for consumer choice. Yael, welcome back to the country, North Carolina, and we look forward to catching up again next week.
Land of the free, home of the brave. Thank you, Joe.
That's our friend Yael Ossowski with the Consumer Choice Center. Great to have him as a friend of the program. And he'll be down in our neck of the woods in just a couple of weeks. Looking forward to that trip back here to the coast. Our friends over at the Consumer Choice Center, once again, every Friday, just after 9:30 here on the Big Talker FM.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. Tune in Thursdays from 6 to 7 p.m. for Objection to the Form, covering civil litigation, real estate issues, and intellectual property. That's Objection to the Form, Thursdays 6 to 7 p.m. right here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
We interrupt to bring you this horrible news. Experts say we'll see larger numbers and different breeds of mosquitoes to wreak havoc on your backyard, making this year one of the worst.
Anopheles and Culex variety mosquito.
Yeah. Experts also say there is only one defense against this onslaught. Call the Bugman from Bugno Pest Control.
That's Mr. Bugno to you, pal.
Bugno Pest Control's mosquito-killing formula keeps your yard bug-free. Call Bugno Pest Control, 910-367-2501, or visit BugnoPestControl.com. Take back your yard.
Do you or someone you love suffer from back pain, poor circulation, or struggle to get a good night's sleep? Do you just need help getting into or out of your chair? US Med Express is Wilmington's leading supplier of golden technology lift and sleep chairs, carrying a variety of models in our showroom at 1733 Dawson Street. Our chairs lead the industry in power lift recliner features and advances in technology. Our chairs are FDA certified as medical devices, which means it's 100% tax deductible and helps with a number of medical conditions, including arthritis, poor circulation, and sleep apnea. Give us a call today at 910-500-6162 or stop by and experience our chairs for yourself at 1733 Dawson Street. That's 910-500-6162. 1733 Dawson Street in Wilmington. US Med Express. Here, Tom Goolsby on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American. Fight for what's right. Fight for your life.
So as we round out our program, I hope you enjoyed the show here this morning. And each and every day we take to the airwaves. It was a roller coaster ride from where we were at the beginning of the week So closing things out with our friend Yael Ossowski, like we do every Friday with the Consumer Choice Center. So yesterday, the White House issued a proclamation to commemorate the 70th annual National Day of Prayer. But there was something noticeably absent from the proclamation, in that it included antidotes to racial justice and climate change. They were featured in the proclamation commemorating the 70th annual National Day of Prayer. Something noticeably absent to the proclamation as it was released, without a mention of God once. How do you release a proclamation about prayer and not mention God at all? But climate change, racial justice, all in it. So as we round out the show here this morning, we will deliver our creed, America's creed, to our listeners of southeastern North Carolina. I do not choose to be the common man. It is my right to be uncommon. If I can, I seek opportunity, not security. I do not wish to be a kept citizen, humbled and dulled by having the state look after me. I want to take the calculated risk, to dream and to build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for a dole. I prefer the challenges of life to the guaranteed existence, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will never cower before any master nor bend to any threat. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud, and unafraid, to think and act for myself, to enjoy the benefit of my creations, and to face the world boldly and say, this, with God's help, I have done. All this is what it means to be an entrepreneur. Have a great weekend.
Keeping Oak Island informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.